Okay, smarty pants, answer this one. Do you know what earthquake magnitudes actually feel like? Well, at magnitude 1, you wouldn't notice a thing. At 3, you might slosh your coffee if you're drinking. At 5, things can start to shake off shelves, and it definitely gets your heart racing. But at 7.5, that's when the ground itself rips, buildings sway, and whole streets can split. And now, scientists warn a fault we thought wasn't active anymore could unleash something that strong under a small sleepy town in Canada. Now, if you trace your finger across a map of northwestern Canada, you'll find Dawson City in the Yukon. It looks like a nice place to escape from civilization. After all, it only has about 1,600 residents. It's quiet, remote, and famous for its gold rush past. In the late 1890s, Dawson City ballooned into a boomtown almost overnight as prospectors chased gold. Today, the rush is long gone, but the town still looks the part. Wooden boardwalks and saloon-style facades give it the feel of a set straight out of a Western movie. Oh, and beneath all of that is a fracture in the Earth itself. Dawson City is located on top of what's known as the Tintina Fault. It's a massive crack in the Earth's crust that stretches for hundreds of miles toward Alaska. Until recently, scientists believed that this zone had been inactive for over 40 million years. But newer studies tell a different story. Just a quick reminder, faults are giant cracks when two slabs of Earth's crust meet. They're always trying to slide past each other, but their jagged edges catch and lock. Pressure builds for decades, continuously bending and straining the rock. Then, suddenly, the locked zone breaks, and the slabs slip into a new position in just seconds. That abrupt lurch releases all the stored energy, sending seismic waves racing outward. The ground-shaking consequence is called an earthquake. Scientists say the ground on each side of Tintina has been trying to slide past itself for ages, but it's stuck. And now, that stuck zone has built up around 20 feet of strain. That's how far the land would shift sideways if it all gave at once. That's not just a small crack. That's straight up something from a disaster movie. If all that built-up tension snaps in one go, the result could be a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. How strong is that? Well, pretty strong. So, what happens during a big quake? The shaking can last up to 30 seconds or more, which is an eternity when the walls are swaying and the floor feels like it's rolling under your feet. If you're near the fault, things can get really scary. The ground doesn't just shake, it could take a big step sideways. This can lead to some renovations. Roads might get a new zigzag pattern, and unreinforced buildings could decide to do the twist. And if it happens in a Canadian winter, let's just say it could turn a simple power outage into a survival horror adventure. Being on soft soil is like sitting on wobbly jelly. It amplifies the shaking. Solid rock is a bit more stable. However, it's still dangerous. For example, in Mexico in 2003, a 7.5 quake damaged over 43,000 homes, buckled roads, and cut power for miles. In Sulawesi in 2018, the same magnitude not only leveled buildings, but triggered a tsunami and liquefaction. The whole neighborhood was swallowed as the ground turned to quicksand. Now here's something interesting. Most people don't think of Canada as an earthquake country, but it actually gets around 5,000 quakes a year. However, they're so small that you'd never feel them. The real hot spot is the West Coast, near British Columbia. That's where you hear people whisper about the infamous Big One. It refers to a future megathrust earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone, a massive fault that runs for 600 miles just offshore. Unlike Tintina's sideways slip, Cascadia works by one tectonic plate shoving under another. For centuries, the North American plate has been bent upward like a spring as the Juan de Fuca plate has been diving below. When it finally snaps, that's a magnitude 9.0, more than 30 times stronger than a 7.5. We know it can happen because it already has. The last big one struck in 1700. It was so powerful, it didn't just shake the Pacific Northwest. It launched a tsunami across the ocean that smacked Japan, where villagers recorded an orphan wave with no local quake to explain it. Only later did scientists connect the dots. Now this brings us to the fact that despite all this, the size of the fault, the quiet buildup of strain, and the potential for a magnitude 7.5 earthquake, the Titina Fault isn't even listed on Canada's official seismic hazard map, at least for now. That means no warnings, no color-coded danger zones. And when a fault isn't on the map, nobody designs a building for it. There's no proper preparation. You don't build reinforced structures or have seismic codes, especially when people don't expect that the ground could split open. Now, to be honest, that's not someone's mistake. The fault just didn't show any signs of being active recently. And this part of Canada is really big, quiet, and doesn't have a lot of monitoring. Not until too long ago, people had thought of the Titina as just a geological oddity, something cool for looking at the past, but not really relevant for the future. For years, the Titina Fault flew under the radar, but that changed when researchers brought high-tech gear. They uncovered subtle but clear land shifts near Dawson City. They looked like scars on the landscape and pointed to past earthquakes, including one that pushed the land nearly 3,000 feet over millions of years. Now, interestingly, newer glacial features showed no signs of disruption, which means the last major quake probably happened right before the end of the last ice age. In geologic terms, that's pretty recent. When scientists lined up those land shifts with the ages of glaciers, the picture was clear. The Titina Fault isn't retired. It's just been on a really long coffee break, and now it's itching to clock back in. That's why researchers want it officially on Canada's seismic hazard map. Dawson City deserves more than a shrug emoji when the ground decides to stretch. The experts are basically playing detective with dirt. They're scanning forests and rivers for faint scars that past earthquakes tried to hide. They're digging trenches like archaeologists with a taste for chaos, flipping through the Earth's diary one muddy page at a time. Every crack, wrinkle, and layer adds to the story of when Titina last threw a tantrum and how loud the next one could be. It's pretty cool that satellites can literally track if one side of a valley is slowly creeping ahead of the other, like tectonic snail racing. The goal is to find out how often this fault snapped in the past, how much stress it's still holding on to today, and whether it's going to go off quietly or all at once. Finally, just because you know that plates are pushing against each other underneath, you still can't put a date on it. Long stretches of silence might mean the rocks are getting ready for something huge, or they could just be releasing stress in tiny ways that go unnoticed. Scientists can model possibilities, but no one has a countdown clock for the next rupture. The smartest mindset isn't prediction, it's preparation. You brace for the plausible, not the precise, because the Earth's schedule doesn't come with reminders. It turns out the Earth's crust is always fidgeting. It's just that our maps are a little behind on the gossip. A fault everyone thought was harmless might actually be sitting on a magnitude 7.5 size secret. But don't worry, this isn't a cue to panic. It's a cue to get smart. Better data, sturdier buildings, and a few just-in-case habits. When the ground finally decides to settle its debt, what really matters isn't whether Dawson City feels the shake. It's whether everyone's prepared enough to turn a potential disaster into just a real wild story to tell later. Hey, have you ever been in an earthquake? I have. Tell me your story in the comments.
Imagine standing in a quiet northern town, surrounded by mountains and forests, when the ground beneath your feet suddenly shifts with the force of a freight train. That's not a movie scene. It's a very real possibility for the people living in Dawson City, Canada. Hidden beneath the tranquil Yukon landscape lies a geological giant, the Titina Fault. For more than 12,000 years, it has been silent, but new research suggests it might be ready to wake up in a spectacular and dangerous way. Stretching over 1,000 kilometers from the Yukon into Alaska, the Titina Fault is like a massive crack in Earth's crust, a boundary where colossal slabs of rock slowly grind past each other. On the surface, it looks harmless, just rugged terrain, rivers, and forests. But deep underground, strain is quietly building, like a spring being wound tighter and tighter. Theron Findlay, a geologist from the University of Victoria, and his team decided to take a closer look at a section of this fault near Dawson City. This wasn't just a casual inspection. They used cutting-edge tools like high-resolution satellite images, aerial surveys, and LiDAR, a laser-based scanning method that can reveal subtle changes in the ground's shape. What they found was unsettling. In one location, the ground was visibly displaced by an astonishing 1,000 meters, evidence of a long series of powerful earthquakes millions of years ago. In another area, they spotted a smaller but still significant offset of about 75 meters, likely caused by more recent quakes, roughly 132,000 years ago. Since then, nothing major. At least, nothing visible. And that's exactly the problem. When a fault line hasn't released energy for thousands of years, it doesn't mean it's safe. Quite the opposite. It could mean that massive pressure has been silently accumulating. Based on their calculations, the Tintina Fault has been moving at a slow creep of up to 0.8 millimeters per year. Over 12,000 years, that adds up to a staggering 6 meters of potential movement waiting to be unleashed. If that strain were to suddenly break free, the resulting earthquake could be bigger than magnitude 7.5. For context, that's in the same league as some of the most destructive quakes in history, like the 1976 Tangshan earthquake in China, or the 2010 Haiti disaster. While the Yukon isn't densely populated, the impact could still be devastating, damaging highways, collapsed buildings, landslides cutting off communities, and potentially loss of life. The scientists can't say when it will happen. Earthquakes don't work on a schedule, and predicting the exact moment of rupture is one of geology's greatest challenges. What they do know is that the Tintina Fault is in what's called a late stage of its seismic cycle, a point where the risk of a major quake is higher. For the people of Dawson City and surrounding areas, this means living with a quiet but ever-present threat. Emergency planners might advise residents to have evacuation routes, survival kits, and backup communication plans. But in the end, this is a reminder of a simple truth. Earth is never truly still. Even in the most peaceful landscapes, immense forces are always at work, reshaping the planet in ways we can't always see, until the day they reveal themselves with a violent jolt. Yet, the story of the Tintina Fault is more than a warning. It's a glimpse into how Earth stores and releases its pent-up energy. Each millimeter of annual movement is like another twist of a key in a lock. At some point, the lock will turn, and when it does, the release will be sudden and powerful. LiDAR images reveal ancient scars across the land, subtle to the untrained eye, but obvious to scientists. These are the footprints of past disasters, frozen in the ground like a history book carved by nature. Findlay and his colleagues believe the region's seismic silence has lulled people into a false sense of security. A place can be both beautiful and dangerous, and the Yukon is a perfect example. Visitors come for the sweeping vistas and endless wilderness, rarely realizing that deep beneath their hiking trails and scenic roads, forces are shifting that could change the landscape overnight. This hidden drama plays out all over the world. Fault lines in California, Turkey, Japan, and beyond all share one trait. They eventually break. The question is never if, but when. The Tintina Fault just happens to be one of the quieter players, which in geological terms can be far more ominous than the noisy ones. And so, the clock ticks, silently, in the frozen north, counting down to a moment no one can see coming.
The floor is lava. Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level. And a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence. And when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first. Canada is massive, but almost everyone lives in the east or the west. And right in the middle, there is this huge stretch of land where hardly anyone calls home, Northern Ontario. So why does this place almost feel off limits? Northern Ontario is part of, well, Ontario. It's a super busy province, home to major cities like Toronto and Ottawa. About 1/3 of all Canadians live there, but most of them are down in the southern part of the province, not up north. But that doesn't really add up when you think about it because the northern part is way, way bigger. We're talking about a region that is more than 300,000 square miles, pretty much the same size as the whole country of Turkey. Northern Ontario takes up about 87% of the entire province, but strangely, only about 6% of Ontario's population lives in this area. But before you start dreaming about moving there for some peace and quiet, hold on. There are 4 big reasons people choose not to, and honestly, you'll probably agree. Reason number 1, the land itself. Look up the region on Google Earth, and all you will see is a huge stretch of empty space. Nothing special at first glance. But zoom in, and that's when things start getting complicated. Northern Ontario is famous for its rugged, remote landscapes, full of endless forests and lakes. It's beautiful to look at or snap a photo of, but living there is a whole different story. The geography makes the area tough to get around and makes it hard to build things like transportation routes and railways. And since it's so difficult to put decent roads up there, the whole region stays pretty isolated. That takes us to reason number 2, remoteness. You might think that, being in the center of the country, it could serve as a great link between the eastern and western parts of Canada. But in reality, that's not how it works, and the region is very far from Canada's major cities. Take Greater Sudbury, the largest city in Northern Ontario, with around 160,000 people. The closest major city is Toronto, which is about 230 miles away. So yeah, that's roughly a 4-hour drive just to get there. If you're planning a holiday weekend in a big, dynamic city, a 4-hour drive sounds like a fun road trip. But if you need to go for a dental appointment or sort out paperwork, that distance suddenly feels endless, not to mention the cost. Unfortunately, that's how life is for many people up there. Residents of Northern Ontario don't have easy access to opportunities or services. With so few people scattered across such a huge area, the region doesn't have enough facilities, infrastructure, or easy access to essential services like healthcare and education. People there sometimes have to deal with poor or even non-existent infrastructure, like missing roads, airports, hospitals, and schools. Without those things, settling down is really tough. And in rural areas, it's even worse, because the lack of services can seriously hurt their quality of life. Psychologically speaking, that's not great either. People can end up feeling isolated and lonely, and the freezing weather doesn't help. Which brings us to reason number 3 why most people don't live in Northern Ontario: the harsh climate. If you're not a fan of cold weather, you should definitely leave this region off your travel bucket list. Winters up there can be long and brutal, with temperatures sometimes dropping as low as 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Have you ever tried shoveling snow when it's this cold? Yeah, it's not exactly fun. That kind of harsh weather doesn't just mess up your weekend plans or your daily jog. It also makes transportation a huge challenge. The result is that many residents end up isolated from essential services and job opportunities. And it's also really hard to build infrastructure, grow industries, or run businesses because of that harsh climate. Take farming, for example. Compared to Southern Ontario, the northern region has a shorter growing season and much colder weather. Although crops like oats, potatoes, and green beans can handle the cold, the climate usually limits the variety of things that can be grown. That's why most farms are concentrated in the southern part of the province, and in other parts of the country, like the prairies and Quebec. Anyway, that's just one example of how the climate makes it tough for people to build a strong foundation to support themselves. And that's exactly the 4th reason why Northern Ontario is so empty: the economy. It's not that there aren't any jobs available. In fact, there are plenty. In 2023, the northern part of Ontario had some of the highest job vacancy rates in the country. So unlike in many parts of the world, it's a place where they have tons of jobs available, but no people to fill them. One reason people don't take those jobs is that many of them are older. Just look at Elliott Lake, for example. 42% of the people living in the city are over 65 years old. That's the 3rd highest concentration of older adults anywhere in Canada. But it's not all that different in the rest of the region either. Estimates show that by 2036, people aged 65 and older will make up almost 30% of Northern Ontario's total population. And do you see what happens when they hit 65, right? They've got their pensions, and going back to work just isn't on the radar. This problem only gets worse because young people just don't seem interested in living there. Every year, lots of students around 17 or 18 years old pack their bags and either drive across the province or fly across the country to study somewhere away from their northern homes. And many of them don't come back. But that's actually pretty strange considering the region does have a strong economy.
especially in mining. Take the Red Lake area, for example. It's packed with gold. In fact, it's home to one of the richest gold deposits in the world and has already turned out over 30 million ounces of the metal. That's definitely helped Canada stay ranked among the top 5 gold-producing countries in the world. Then, there's this region, known as the Ring of Fire. It's centered around McFaulds Lake in the Kenora district and covers about 1,900 square miles. It's rich in valuable minerals like chromite, cobalt, nickel, copper, and platinum. These days, Northern Ontario's mining industry is making a big comeback and attracting new investments. That's happening because the world is suddenly desperately looking for critical minerals. By that, I mean essential elements used in modern technologies like smartphones and renewable energy systems. Minerals like cobalt, nickel, and copper are especially important for making the batteries that power electric cars, for example. So, right now, it seems like the whole mining scene in the region is doing pretty well, but the industry has gone through plenty of ups and downs, with fluctuations and periods of decline. And that, combined with the possible lack of variety and jobs outside the mining industry, means people are more likely to leave the region in search of better opportunities. Interestingly though, mining companies are now struggling to find enough skilled workers in Northern Ontario. And that's probably because of all the reasons we've already talked about: an older population, harsh weather, tough geography, and a long distance from major urban centers. So, it's basically a cycle. And local authorities are trying to break out of it by improving infrastructure in the region, offering more incentives, and finding ways to keep young workers from leaving. Some of their strategies include offering cash rewards to people who refer healthcare workers for job openings or providing tax-free payments to help cover higher home energy costs. And there are plenty of other initiatives too. So yeah, with strategies like these, it's definitely possible to grow the population there. And who knows, maybe one day this region could be bustling with people.
Hey, quick question. How many continents are there? 7? Maybe 5? There's no correct answer. According to different approaches, the range is between 4 to 7. But it might actually be as many as 8. Chances are, a lost continent has recently been found between Greenland and Canada. This new continent discovery could also potentially be the key to how microcontinents form. What does this all mean, and what makes this hidden landmass near Greenland so important? Now, if you're like me, and if you are, then there's 2 of us, when you hear the word continent, you probably think of land like Europe or Africa, places above water where people live. But in science, a continent isn't about being above sea level. It's about what the land is made of. Earth's outer layer, called the crust, comes in 2 main types, continental and oceanic. Continental one is thicker, lighter, and made of different types of rock, like granite. The oceanic crust is thinner, heavier, and made mostly of dark volcanic rock. Now, the discovery under the Davis Strait between Greenland and Canada appears to be a piece of continental landmass, even though it's under the ocean. Scientists call it a proto-microcontinent because it began to break off from a larger terrain millions of years ago, but never quite made it. As tectonic plates slowly shifted, the Earth's crust in this region stretched and cracked. One chunk started to split away, but for some reason, the process stopped. It didn't drift off like a full continent, and it didn't sink like ocean crust either. Instead, it stayed right there, floating beneath the waves all this time. This makes it different from true microcontinents, like Zealandia, which have completely detached and now exist as separate tectonic blocks. Zealandia is a submerged microcontinent near New Zealand. About 94% of it lies underwater, but because it's made of continental crust, many geologists say it qualifies as Earth's 8th continent. However, Zealandia is still debated because it's too big to be a microcontinent, and there's no official global body to define its status. There's no global organization like the UN or some kind of international geology council that can declare, hey, this is a new continent. Unlike Madagascar, which is fully above sea level and widely accepted by geologists as a classic example of a microcontinent, Zealandia is still waiting for a proper label. I know you're probably wondering, isn't Madagascar an island? The simple answer is, it's both. It's the fourth largest island in the world completely surrounded by water, but it's also geologically considered a microcontinent because it broke off from the supercontinent Gondwana around 88 million years ago and is made of continental crust, not oceanic crust. Unlike volcanic islands like Hawaii, this isn't just built from lava. It's a real piece of ancient continental crust. So Madagascar checks both boxes: island by geography, microcontinent by geology. And that's exactly why these discoveries can be fascinating. Just like Madagascar stands out above the waves, this newly discovered landmass under the Davis Strait stands out beneath them, thanks to its unusual structure. What makes it stand out is its unusual thickness. Most of the ocean floor is thin, like metal. This is more like packed clay, layered with continental materials. Underneath this cozy comforter, scientists discovered some odd layers of rock, unusual because they're not where they should be. These layers act more like the materials found on continents rather than those typically seen on ocean floors. There are hints of granite-like formations and distinct magnetic properties, which suggest that this stuff is similar to what makes up dry land. The size is also remarkable. The proto-microcontinent is about 12 to 15 miles across, which makes it roughly the size of a mid-sized city, like Manhattan Island at 6,500 feet underwater. The fact that it sits right under the Davis Strait, one of the widest ocean passages on Earth, makes it one of the largest submerged continental fragments we've found. According to researchers, this landmass began to form between 58 and 49 million years ago, when Greenland and Canada were slowly drifting apart. Maybe they just weren't getting along. Hey, it happens. As they pulled apart, the crust under the Davis Strait stretched, and one of the main fault lines shifted. But the breakup didn't finish. Around 48 million years ago, the rifting stalled and Greenland's motion away from Canada slowed dramatically when it later bumped into Ellesmere Island. It's like a car swerving off and then back onto the freeway, a turn that was never completed. That's basically what happened. A chunk of land got stuck between the motion. It didn't float off into the ocean like a new continent, and it didn't get pulled down into the earth either. It just stayed where it was, stranded beneath the water. But that's not all. This chunk has its own fault system, and scientists say it actually looks like a miniature version of the San Andreas Fault in California. Now, a fault is basically a crack in the Earth's crust where sections of rock slide past each other. Think of it as a place where the Earth's surface split and tried to slide sideways. In California, this movement still happens today and can cause earthquakes. But under the Davis Strait, it's a different story. The movement started, then suddenly stopped, like hitting pause in the middle of a big shift. It's a frozen moment in the planet's past, preserved right beneath the waves. For geologists, that makes the microcontinent under Davis Strait incredibly valuable. That sudden pause in motion helps explain why some chunks of land break away cleanly, while others twist, stall, or disappear. But this isn't just academic. By studying how continents break apart or stall, scientists can better predict future shifts in land, fault lines, and seismic activity. And predicting earthquakes and geological hazards could prove quite valuable to everyone. Knowing how microcontinents form could help us anticipate how the planet's surface might shift over millions of years, which affects everything from climate models to resource availability. But even just the technological advancement needed for such discoveries is greatly beneficial. The same tools used to map this hidden land are used for oil exploration, laying undersea cables, climate monitoring, and even search and rescue missions. Speaking of technology, for a long time, this hidden landmass near Greenland remained invisible. Just 10 or 15 years ago, the ocean floor under the Davis Strait was basically a mystery. It's deep, almost frozen, obviously not the easiest place to explore. But today, thanks to modern tools, a new continent discovery could be just a matter of time. Scientists can finally see and hear what's going on under all that water. First, they use seismic reflection imaging. That's a method where ships send sound waves down to the ocean floor and record how they bounce back. Various layers of rock reflect sounds in different ways, which helps build a picture of what's hidden underneath. It's kind of like how bats use echoes to see in the dark. Satellites also play a role in collecting gravity data. This may sound strange, but different types of rocks have slightly different weights. Heavier rocks create stronger gravitational pull, and satellites can measure those tiny differences. Another tool commonly used for these explorations is underwater sensors, which sit quietly on the seafloor and listen for natural vibrations, like mini earthquakes or shifts in rock. These vibrations help scientists figure out what the crust is made of and how thick it is. They're basically ears on the ocean floor. They also most likely used AUVs, or autonomous underwater vehicles, basically robot submarines that can scan the seafloor in high resolution even under thick ice. In any case, scientists are very excited because this new continent discovery is more than just a geological surprise. It's what they call a natural laboratory. The study of the microcontinent Davis Strait offers a rare opportunity to understand how microcontinents form, evolve, and sometimes fail to fully separate. It also reminds us that Earth's crust isn't as neatly divided as we once thought. Beneath the ocean, there may be other hidden landmasses near Greenland or elsewhere, almost continents, just waiting to be found. This lost continent of Canada may not have made it as a fully fledged landmass, but its discovery is already reshaping how we view plate tectonics. And thanks to advances in technology, places we once ignored are now offering up secrets about the planet's deep past, and maybe even its future.
Some places don't look important until the world realizes they hold the keys to the future. That's the case with Canada's Arctic. For most of history, it was just ice, snow, rocks, caribou, and even more ice. But now, it's about to become one of the most important places on Earth, and maybe make Canada a global superpower. Why? Because it's hiding minerals that power electric vehicles, satellites, and missile systems, while the demand is skyrocketing. However, it's not just mining and having resources, it's also about control. Right now, China has a massive head start because it refines over 90% of the world's rare earths. That means if you want to launch a satellite, manufacture advanced electronics, or even just keep the lights on in your fancy smart home, odds are you're relying on China. And that makes a lot of world powers very nervous. Because when everything's going electric, the last thing you need is being dependent on your geopolitical rival. So now, the global clean tech treasure hunt is officially on. The US, Europe, Japan, Australia, they're all competing. However, the latest technology and untapped potential might give Canada the upper hand. Canada's had these minerals for decades. But with low prices, tough terrain, and no global rush, they mostly stayed untouched. However, Ottawa is finally stepping up its game. Back in 2022, Canada rolled out the Critical Minerals Strategy with billions in funding and tax perks to get companies digging. There's also plans to build the necessary roads, ports, and power lines to tap into those remote deposits up north. Canada already produces more than 60 minerals and metals, but 31 of them are now considered critical. 6 of those are having VIP treatment: lithium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements. But digging it up is just step 1. The real plan? Keep it local. Melt that frozen treasure into shiny new batteries right at home. That means not just mines, but also refineries, processing centers, and high-tech factories popping up where there used to be nothing but snowdrifts and silence. While others are talking, Canada's busy paving roads and stringing power lines. Slowly but surely, they're turning snowfields into a high-tech playground. Getting to all that buried treasure used to be nearly impossible. After all, we're talking about land so remote that roads literally stop hundreds of miles too early. The ground is frozen solid for most of the year. And even if you found something valuable, just getting out was a logistical nightmare. So what changed? Canada has an ace up its sleeve. Don't know about you, but I use it mainly for making memes and music. But geologists? They're scanning the Arctic like it's Minecraft with X-ray vision. Instead of drilling blind, they're using decades-old core samples, plugging them into AI, and getting shockingly accurate predictions about what's underground. It's like upgrading from a pirate's treasure map to a GPS that actually says, "dig here." Companies like Geologic AI and Cobalt Metals are already doing this, pouring data into AI and getting X marks the spot hits for nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. In the Northwest Territories, Canada is running a pilot lab that uses AI and digital scanning to reanalyze decades-old rock samples. The goal is to spot hidden mineral deposits that old methods might have missed without digging a single new hole. All that sounds great, but maybe I made it sound simpler than it is. Digging up the Arctic is a logistical nightmare. For starters, this isn't just a remote patch of land. The Canadian Arctic is huge. Almost half the country, stretching over Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. We're talking about a region larger than India, with fewer people than a small city. Most of it is permafrost, wilderness, or ice-covered islands scattered across the Arctic archipelago. Temperatures go from barely 50 degrees Fahrenheit during summer to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, with ground that stays frozen for most of the year. Fun fact, did you know that negative 40 degrees happens to be the same as negative 40 degrees Celsius? It's the one temperature where both scales intersect. They climb at different rates, but eventually cross paths when it gets cold enough. Just a small trivia nugget for weather nerds like me. Anyways, you can't just roll in a truck and break ground in the Arctic. Up there, roads just stop. Want to build something? It can take years, and one nasty winter can put everything on ice. And if you want to continue up north, you need more of everything. More food, more fuel, more machines, which means even more money. Speaking of money, another chilling fact is how much this all costs. Mining in the far north is way more expensive than doing it in, say, Australia or Chile. An AI might tell you where the minerals are, but people and big machines still have to dig, and that costs a fortune. But that's not all. Most of the Canadian North is Indigenous land. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities have lived there for thousands of years, and mineral hotspots often sit right on their ancestral grounds. So when Canada talks about unlocking the Arctic, it's not just a question of roads and robots. It's a question of partnership and collaboration. And that's not optional. Legally, projects on Indigenous land require consultation and, in many cases, consent. The good news, some communities aren't just involved, they're leading the way. In regions like Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, Indigenous-owned corporations and world powers are already shaping how development happens on their terms. If Canada wants to pull this off, it's going to need more than tech and funding. It's going to need trust. So with all that in mind, can Canada pull this off? Honestly? With technological advancements and partnerships, it doesn't seem impossible. But Canada isn't just doing one thing right. It's doing a bunch of things at the same time. Let's recap. Hidden resources? Checked. New strategy? In place. Big funding? Approved. AI tools? Deployed. Indigenous partnerships? Underway. Infrastructure? Already breaking ground. It's a snowball turning into an avalanche. Exploration boosts investment. Investment speeds up roads. Roads unlock more deposits. More deposits attract more factories. It's a feedback loop, and if they keep feeding it, the whole Arctic operation could go from an idea to empire faster than anyone expects, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase, frozen assets. But this doesn't just help Canada. It could save the US a whole lot of trouble. If all goes to plan, the US won't need to ship rare earths halfway across the planet. It can just look north, wave at the caribou, and get what it needs from its closest neighbor. That's why the US has publicly backed the effort, offering support and funding to help build a trusted North American supply chain. For Canada, this could be the moment it stops being just a supplier of raw materials and starts becoming a critical power broker in the clean tech economy. For the US, it's like discovering your neighbor has been secretly building a battery factory in their backyard while you were building electric vehicles. And globally? Well, the abundance of resources tends to lower the prices, and that's always a good thing for us regular people. Cheaper cobalt, nickel, and lithium mean cheaper batteries, and cheaper batteries mean more affordable electric vehicles, energy storage, phones, laptops, the works. Now, don't get too excited just yet.
Like we said, mining in the Arctic isn't cheap. But in theory, once Canada's clean tech engine is fully up and humming, more supply and shorter supply chains should gradually bring costs down. And it's not just about price tags, it's about stability. Right now, if one country cuts exports or gets caught in politics, everything down the line gets shaky. But with Canada stepping in as a reliable supplier, the global system might get a bit more breathing room. Manufacturers can stop sweating over single points of failure and start building with confidence.
Consider South America and Africa. Don't they kind of look like they fit together, like puzzle pieces? Well, they actually did. But about 130 million years ago, South America was like, bye, and slowly started drifting away. These days, it's around 1,800 miles from Africa, and it's still on the move. Every year, the continent shifts a little more toward the Pacific Ocean. So, how's that even happening? Tectonic plates are constantly moving. That's what makes the Earth's surface shift over time, going from this to what we see today. But those movements happen so slowly that you and I can't see them go. So, no, Brazilians or Chileans aren't out there feeling their continent inching westward. But the numbers don't lie. South America is moving, and apparently all it wants is to get as far away as possible from this massive underwater mountain range called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. But what exactly is pushing the land toward the Pacific Ocean? It is the heat inside our planet. Way, way down beneath the ocean, there are cracks in the Earth's crust, and magma, super hot melted rock, rises up through those cracks. When that happens, the magma cools and hardens into solid rock. Over time, this process might build underwater mountains, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And as more new crust forms, it begins to push the older crust out of the way. In the process, tectonic plates and the continents riding on top of them get pushed along. Now, on the other side of South America, over by the Pacific, there is the Nazca Plate. It's heavier and it's moving eastward. Since it is denser, it is sliding underneath the South American Plate. This entire process is called subduction, and it's happening at a rate of about 3 inches per year. By the way, the collision between these two plates is what's behind all those breathtaking volcanoes scattered throughout the Andes, and it's also making the continent move. So, if everything goes according to plan, projections show that South America will end up more centered in the Pacific Ocean in the future. But some models suggest something way crazier. Before we get into that, though, we need to clear something up. Why on earth isn't Africa following in South America's footsteps? I mean, shouldn't it be drifting west too? Well, not quite. Africa is doing its own thing, because it sits on the African Plate. So the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is located between those two continents, and just like it pushes the South American Plate, it also pushes the African Plate, but in the opposite direction. It's like this ridge is trying to split up two ex-besties, But there's more. Africa is also being influenced by the East African Rift. That's one of those massive cracks we talked about earlier, but it's happening on land, which makes it extra dramatic. This is what's causing the continent to slowly split apart. It's a long story, but let's just say the rift is pulling Africa in more directions than South America ever had to deal with. Okay, now it is finally time to talk about that crazier thing that might happen to South America and everything around it in the future. Theory number 1. It could break away from North America. I know, super dramatic, but don't panic. We're talking hundreds of millions of years from now, and I won't be around. You see, both continents are moving in the same general direction, but at different speeds. The North American Plate is cruising along at about 1 inch per year, while South America is moving a bit faster. So even though they're heading the same way, they are not keeping pace. Over time, as the Atlantic Ocean continues to widen and the Pacific keeps shrinking, all this tectonic movement could eventually pull the Americas apart. Theory number 2. Marine life could go through some major changes. Right now, the Americas act as kind of a giant wall between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Because of that, sea animals have evolved differently on each side. Take the green sea turtle, for example. The ones living in the Atlantic tend to be bigger and lighter in color. Meanwhile, their Pacific cousins are usually smaller and darker. But if, one day, there is no land blocking these two populations from mixing, they would end up with brand new migration routes, new nesting spots, and a lot more overlap in their territories. Now, multiply that scenario by hundreds of other species, and things could really get shaken up. We're talking about new interactions, unexpected competition, and maybe even the rise of entirely new species. Alright, theory number 3. America might meet Africa again. Right now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is busy creating a new seafloor, and because of that, the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting wider. But in about 125 million years, scientists believe that process could come to a stop. Instead of the seafloor spreading apart, the ocean floor might start getting pulled under the continents. When that happens, the Atlantic will stop growing and start shrinking. And the water section between South America and Africa is likely to be the first part pulled beneath the land. That means the Americas and Africa could meet again. And when that happens, border countries could turn into super shaky places, with earthquakes happening all the time and brand new volcanoes popping up left and right. The eastern United States would no longer be known for the peaceful green slopes of the Appalachians, but for snow-covered giants that occasionally spew lava and ash, more like the Cascade Range out west. Countries would end up with totally new neighbors. Brazil might line up with Nigeria and Cameroon. Uruguay could be sitting right next to Angola, and Argentina might be sharing a border with South Africa. So if these two continents really do merge, how intense would that be? Well, for starters, this new supercontinent would instantly become the biggest one on Earth, about 1.5 times the size of Asia. And chances are, a brand new mountain range would form right where the continents meet, creating a natural border between nations. Being part of the same massive continent could make a lot of things way easier. For one, tourism could totally take off. People traveling between countries by land without needing pricey plane tickets could be a game changer. But it wouldn't stop there. Other types of economic activity could get a major boost too. Now on one side we have South America, which already produces and sells a wide variety of foods, from wheat to bananas, beef, cocoa, soybeans, hey, you name it. On the other side, there is Africa, exporting things like textiles and clothing. That alone would make them a super powerful bloc when it comes to trading raw goods. But can you name another important thing these two continents have in common? Yep, petroleum. Countries in South America, like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, are major oil exporters. And over in Africa, you've got Nigeria, Algeria, and Libya doing the same. Now, can you see just how powerful that kind of union could be? Meanwhile, let's talk about animals. These two massive lands coming together could lead us to wild meetups, like a capybara sharing space with a Nile crocodile, or a sloth seeing a hyena from the top of a tree. This could even lead to new animal hybrids showing up, like a tabby crocodile or a sloth hyena. Okay, those weren't the cleverest names, and honestly, these animals wouldn't be able to mate or even wouldn't want to. But you get the point, right? It's not all positive, unfortunately. New species showing up could become predators, competitors, or even parasites to the native plants and animals. It would take a long time for things to settle into a new balance in those border regions. But honestly, no one really knows how long it would take. The only thing I do know is neither of us will be around to see it, which is okay.
Dinosaurs, big ancient bugs, creepy spiders, and scary insects are all cute animals compared to the monsters that lived on Earth about 500 million years ago. For example, here's a creature that swam in the water like a stingray and had 3 eyes. Its mouth was like a pencil sharpener. 2 long claws with forked tips like pincers protruded from its head, and its gills were somewhere in the back. This is not a thing from a sci-fi movie. This is Mosura. Its remains are preserved in excellent condition. Let's look at it more closely and study other similar monsters. The Cambrian Explosion. Remember this name. This period is also called the Biological Big Bang, the time when a huge number of different living creatures began to appear in the ocean, large, small, and tiny. The ancestors of almost all modern animal groups were most likely born during the Cambrian explosion, which lasted from 541 to 485 million years ago. It was a time when the first truly effective and terrifying predators appeared on Earth. One of them was Mosura. It's only the size of an index finger, but you would never want to meet such a creature while swimming in the sea. It's scary to imagine what it could do with its pencil sharpener-shaped mouth. And you probably wouldn't be able to hide from it because, come on, it had 2 eyes on the sides and 1 big eye on its forehead. Mosura belonged to a group of arthropods. Scientists called it a sea moth since it reminded them of a moth. This thing used a flap-like apparatus similar to wings to float in the water like a stingray. This monster was quite creepy, but its appearance may seem familiar because it's a distant relative of modern spiders, crabs, centipedes, and moths. Scientists found several 506 million-year-old Mosura fossils, but unlike many other similar finds, these ones have been preserved in excellent condition. The found fossils showed sharp claws, a toothy jaw, and large gills in the tail section. Some parts of the fossil were so clear that they revealed the details of the creature's internal anatomy, including parts of its nervous and circulatory systems and digestive tract. It had jointed limbs like those of modern insects and crustaceans. When this monster swam in the sea, it probably grabbed its prey with long spiked claws sticking out of its head. Many Mosura relatives have claws covered with multiple spikes, which help them grab food. But that ancient creature had smooth claws forked at the tips. That is, it grabbed the prey with those tongs, using them like chopsticks, and then brought it to its mouth. Of course, this is an assumption, and nobody saw how this creature actually did it. Unlike many other similar animals, Mosura's posterior segmented body was studded with gills. Scientists don't know why this was necessary, but they assume that such an unusual breathing system helped to adapt to an environment with low oxygen content. Perhaps Mosura led a very active reproductive lifestyle that required high oxygen consumption. Creepy, dangerous, and reproducing fast. An excellent set of qualities for one of the most dangerous predators of antiquity. But what did Mosura eat? It probably caught different types of worms and small arthropods. It's nice to think that this monster lived so long ago and was so small. But what if this creature was the size of a shark and was swimming in the ocean these days? Perhaps it would become a dominant dweller and people would swim much less along the coast. Mosura lived in the water but was discovered in the Burgess Shale rock formation in the Canadian Rockies. Many mountains on Earth were once the seabed inhabited by strange creatures. One of them was Opabinia. It had 5 eyes, a mouth facing backward, a long trunk and claws instead of a nose. Wait, what? It's too strange even for science fiction, even for outer space. In its eccentricity, Opabinia was perhaps the loneliest creature on Earth. Scientists couldn't find another species that would be similar to this individual until recently. Meet Utaurora. It seems to belong to the same species as Opabinia. Its inch-long body was divided into 14 to 15 furrows. Each of them ended in a pointed flap. Opabinia had the same body, but it's unlikely that both monsters were friends. The difference between their timelines was several million years. It's hard to imagine why these monsters needed such strange body structures. Why haven't modern filmmakers used the design of those animals to create cool space monsters yet? Okay, they were creepy creatures, but what about weird and kinda useless ones? Scientists have discovered Su, a legless creature with no head turned inside out. Huh? This 444 million-year-old creature was found in South Africa, north of Cape Town. They called it Su after the discoverer's mother. In fact, it's some kind of new arthropod species that may have lived in low-oxygen waters. This creature was turned inside out, and the outer shell with the legs and head was lost. Thanks to mineralization, muscles, tendons, and even Su's intestines were preserved on the fossil. It's a great success to find such detailed remains of an ancient creature. However, scientists still can't determine the evolutionary history of this species. they're sure that it was a primitive marine arthropod. Okay, we can see that 500 million years ago, Earth was filled with creepy monsters, which fortunately are now extinct. But what about trees? Were they the same as we see now? Or was there something else? Something creepy? Oh yeah. Scientists have discovered a new kind of living organism similar to a tree or a mushroom. It was gigantic and had a very minimalistic design. Meet the Prototaxites. It's basically just a big stick with a round end poking out of the ground. It was smooth, didn't have the usual tree bark, and looked more like a mushroom without a cap. But scientists have recently found out that it wasn't a mushroom at all. Prototaxites probably belonged to a previously unknown branch of life. Prototaxites is considered to be the first giant organism in the history of the planet that lived on land. It existed about 420 to 375 million years ago during the Devonian period. It was the time when plants began to spread across dry land, forming large forests. Over time, they began to grow leaves and form roots in the ground. Then, the first seed plants appeared. The real colonization of land began. The first arthropods, such as centipedes, arachnids, and other unpleasant creatures, began to walk among those forests. Meanwhile, the water was filled with a huge biodiversity. There was a giant supercontinent on the planet, and smaller parts began to break off it. During this period, Prototaxites towered over the land. Some of these things reached 26 feet high and 3 feet wide. It's like a 3-story house and as thick as a palm tree. But what was it? A plant? A mushroom? Algae, perhaps? Scientists discovered them in the middle of the 19th century, but only in 2007 did they conduct chemical analysis. Research showed that it was most likely a giant mushroom, but in 2025, scientists refuted this conclusion. It turns out this may have been an unknown life form that existed separately from the kingdom of fungi, animals, plants, and protists. Scientists noticed that the inner part of Prototaxites consisted of a number of tubes. There are similar tubes inside mushrooms, but the tubes of that ancient living thing branched and joined differently. They even had a different chemical composition. The main building block of mushrooms is chitin, but the Prototaxites contained chemicals similar to lignin, a substance found in the bark of trees and other plants, and its anatomy differs from the structure of any other organism known to us. What were they doing on Earth? Just chilled and enjoyed the bloom of life? Did they produce some kind of fruit, like a banana with eyes and claws? Scientists don't know. What if it was something that was brought to Earth from outer space? What if they were flowers planted by another civilization? What do you think?
So, since 2000, the world has been hit with more than 1,700 earthquakes with magnitude greater than 5. Many happened around the Ring of Fire, located around the Pacific Ocean. In North America, the biggest threat is the San Andreas Fault Line, which can create an earthquake of a magnitude higher than any other, earning it the spine-tingling nickname, the Big One. The potential destruction of California is a terrifying prospect that could have unimaginable consequences. But the Big One is just the beginning of what's to come. Bad news! Scientists have predicted an earth-shattering event that will occur in 2030. Like it or not, there's a 70% chance that we'll experience the Big One, and it will be an earthquake with a magnitude of 6.7. The San Andreas Fault Line will cause the Big One, but what is scary is that we can't predict it. On the other hand, a massive earthquake occurs every 100 years. This means there's always time to prepare for a natural disaster. If we traveled back in time, we'd see a few significant earthquakes like the ones that wiped out San Francisco and Fort Tejon. Buildings made a long time ago are not quake-proof. They will collapse. Even if they survive, you should not enter them. But buildings are not the most dangerous part. You should watch out for electrical lines and gas pipes. Your hill house might be lovely, but it is extremely unsafe. During quakes, the hill can turn into a massive landslide that will destroy everything in its path. Say goodbye to road trips because all the roads will be ruined. You should have some spare water and food since you won't be able to go to the supermarket. This disaster won't be cheap. It will cost the U.S. around $200 billion to recover from the quake. At least the earthquake will not trigger tsunamis, but there's something it can cause more damage than the big one. The notorious Cascadia subduction zones start in California and ends up all the way in Vancouver, Canada. The San Andreas fault line is nothing compared to this zone. It can wipe the whole coast off the face of the Earth, an example of hyperbole. Subduction zones are tectonic plates forced to be one under the other and constantly pulling apart. One is called the North American Plate and the other is the Juan de Fuca Plate. Zones like these are not to be messed with, since they are terrifying hotspots for earthquake activity and extremely dangerous because they cause massive underwater quakes. But they are underwater, so what can they do to us? Well, they can cause giant tsunamis, flooding cities, and destroying the coastline. Right now, the most active zone is the Ring of Fire. The Cascadia zone might be less active, but it is like a sleeping beast that can wake up and destroy everything in its path, causing a groundbreaking earthquake. The last time all this stress was released was in the year 1700. Unlike the San Andreas quake, this one will cause massive tsunamis and much bigger shocks. Let's hope you'll be camping in an open field at that time, because most buildings and bridges will likely be destroyed. Also, be ready for the aftershocks, as they'll be devastating. Nature won't be spared either. Landslides will change animals' habitats. Even our homes will be changed forever. Luckily, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and scientists are doing everything they can to ensure our safety. New rules are implemented. Every new building must be able to withstand massive shocks. They're developing modern warning systems, and every new infrastructure must follow strict quake-proof guidelines. The Juan de Fuca and the North American plates are locked together, but they won't stay like that forever. When they unlock, get ready for a massive shake. The closer you are to the epicenter, the more damage you'll experience. But even if you are lucky to be far away, you may still feel the ground shaking for some time. Now, if we compare the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas fault, we'll see how much more dangerous the Cascadia zone is. In 1994, there was an enormous 6.7 magnitude earthquake in the Northridge area, close to the San Andreas fault. Sadly, many people didn't make it, and some were injured. Back then, buildings were not strong and earthquake-proof, and many of them were damaged. The Cascadia subduction zone can potentially cause a magnitude 9 earthquake. A magnitude 6 quake has the power of around 44 million pounds of dynamite, but a magnitude 9 has the power of 44 trillion pounds of dynamite. The strongest ever recorded quake was in Chile. Its magnitude measured 9.5, and it destroyed most everything. So let's say you've survived the quake, but the struggle is far from over. Soon after, a massive tsunami will strike, with waves that might reach up to 100 feet in some areas. That's so unlike the San Andreas earthquake, which can't produce any significant waves. So say goodbye to your beautiful garden, since salt water will destroy trees and plants, changing the environment for a period of time. The only positive thing will be you won't need Halloween decorations, because all those dried-out trees will resemble a ghost forest. The combination of waves, quakes, and the sheer size of the area will make this natural disaster much more dangerous than any caused by the San Andreas fault or the so-called Big One. A quake similar to this happened around 300 years ago. Many more have been recorded in the past 3,500 years, proving that they continually occur every 400 to 600 years. So, technically, we have around 100 to 300 years before the next big one hits. We still have no idea how exactly the Cascadia subduction zone works, because we discovered it in 1970. This zone is super scary because it can cause big earthquakes. It was found by accident when researchers studied the Ring of Fire. They wanted to know if this area had caused any trouble in the past years, and the proof was under their noses. In Washington, there is a horror forest where nothing has been growing for years. When researchers tested the soil, they found a tremendous amount of salt. They put 2 and 2 together and concluded that a massive tsunami had been the reason. Experts still didn't know when the forest was destroyed, but Japan kept records of a gigantic earthquake that had a similar effect. It was the one that happened in the year 1700. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the next one will occur in 2050. You must know how to survive the Canadian earthquakes and make it out unscathed, so listen carefully. Those who live in this area have almost no experience with earthquakes like this one. Surviving the quake is relatively easy, but the tsunami coming afterwards is the real danger. After the shake, find the highest ground and go there. Only bring the essentials, like food and water. Yeah, leave your baseball card collection at home. After the first hit, don't try to go down. Seismologists say that most likely there will be a few more waves, and they have proven this. On the 22nd of May, 1960, seismologist Jerry Eston and his 4 friends went to Hawaii to see an expected tsunami that was to happen around midnight. They set up their gear on Wailuku Bridge with an escape route planned. This bridge had been destroyed in the previous tsunami, but the new one was much taller and better. After midnight, the water was 4 feet above the average level. The second wave hit a half hour after midnight, and the water rose another 9 feet by 1 a.m. The water started going down and dropped by 7 feet, but the horror was far from over. Next, they saw a wave that was around 20 feet tall. This shows us that tsunamis are unpredictable, and we should listen to experts to stay safe.
A magnitude 15 earthquake has the potential to completely destroy our planet and evaporate all the water in a matter of seconds, leaving Earth uninhabitable. Over 500,000 earthquakes happen annually, but none have a magnitude of 15. 90% of quakes occur in the terrifying Ring of Fire zone located around the Pacific Ocean. The ground there is like jello. It shakes almost constantly. The most powerful earthquake to have ever struck Earth had a magnitude of 9.5. That much power can lengthen or shorten the day. But there's probably an earthquake in the confines of your own home now caused by a speck of dust landing on a table. But it has a power of negative 15 magnitudes. Earthquakes happen when tectonic plates move. They're like Lego pieces that are not properly secured, and when they move up, down, or hit one another, the ground also moves, triggering earthquakes. This tectonic energy acts like a battery. It stores energy for a long time, up to 500 years. When this stored energy is released in a sudden burst, the consequences are horrifying. Even the strongest structures submit to this relentless force that leaves a trail of destruction in its path. In some instances, earthquakes can even trigger tsunamis, amplifying the chaos. Such a crazy amount of power can split the ground open and cause severe damage. The strength of an earthquake is measured by the Richter scale, but now it's being replaced by the moment magnitude scale. When there's an earthquake, we hear about how strong it is. It's usually from 1 to 10. Luckily, we haven't had a Richter scale earthquake yet. The most powerful earthquake to have ever happened in modern history occurred in Chile in the 60s. It was around 9.5 on the Richter scale, and it altered Earth's rotation and messed up the length of the day by around 2 milliseconds. It also triggered a massive tsunami and affected a vast area of 155,000 square miles. The Richter scale doesn't actually have a limit. Still, anything above 25 doesn't need measuring, because if that ever happened, we would simply turn into dust, and nobody would care to measure this disaster. As we said, the strongest earthquake had a magnitude of 9.5. If this magnitude had been just 0.5 stronger, it would have created a ruptured line 2,174 miles long. That is almost 7 times the size of Wyoming. A magnitude 11 earthquake would create a crack halfway around the world. Massive tsunamis would hit coastal areas, destroying everything, and Earth would get into a massive environmental crisis. If you love hiking, you would have new mountains to explore, created by the terrifying earthquake. Even the temperature would increase because of volcanic eruptions and the resulting greenhouse gases. It would turn our planet into a hot oven. The safest places would be far away from any buildings, seas, oceans, and mountains where there would be a low chance of a landslide. Countries unprepared for earthquakes would be totally destroyed, and cities would turn into piles of rubble and dust. Going up on the Richter scale would only make things worse. But don't worry, an earthquake of that power is impossible. Earth's crust doesn't have enough energy to produce such earthquakes. But there is something that has much more power and can produce mega earthquakes. Asteroids are powerful enough to destroy our planet, as we all know from the dinosaur era. That asteroid was around 6 miles long and it caused massive damage to the planet. It triggered earthquakes that shook the ground constantly for months. These terrifying quakes were about 50,000 times stronger than the Chile earthquake. They also triggered a tsunami that was 30,000 times more powerful than the Indian Ocean tsunami. And the latter was one of the most devastating tsunamis to have ever struck Earth. The earthquakes caused by the asteroid had a magnitude of 11, making it the most powerful and scariest natural disaster ever. And let's hope it stays that way. The Indian Ocean tsunami affected only certain areas of the world. Meanwhile, the asteroid tsunami affected every part of the world and had 33-foot-tall waves. Even if you had traveled to the most remote place on Earth, you wouldn't have been able to hide from this Grim Reaper. A 15-magnitude earthquake wouldn't be 15% stronger than the Chile earthquake. The scale doesn't work like that. It would be around 100 million times more powerful than a 9.5 magnitude quake. It could make all the water on Earth evaporate, leaving us devastated and without any H2O to survive. All ecosystems would collapse, all food chains would be broken, and only some super strong bacteria would probably survive the impossible. That is only a fraction of the frightening things that could happen. The ocean is like the AC for our planet. Without it, Earth would be super hot. The ocean also serves as a shield from the sun's powerful rays. It acts as a heat absorber and cools Earth. Scientists think that the most dangerous thing would be the inability of Earth's crust to survive the violent shakes of the 15-magnitude earthquake. If our planet miraculously survived and didn't turn into dust, there would be massive openings in its crust. The ground would become gelatinous. It would randomly move up, down, left, and right, and no building would survive that. Our civilization would be brought back to the Stonehenge era. Tectonic movements like this are devastating. A similar thing happened in Japan when tectonic plates moved 165 feet from each other and then snapped back together, creating a 9-magnitude earthquake. No place on Earth is immune to this bone-chilling natural phenomenon. Still, certain places have higher chances of being destroyed than others, like the Ring of Fire, where 90% of earthquakes happen. This is a place where earthquakes are almost everyday occurrences. The Ring of Fire is located in the Pacific Ocean. It forms a ring around the continents that surround the Pacific. There, several tectonic plates meet, creating highly unstable ground. To make the problem much more terrifying, 75% of active volcanoes are located in this area. 90% of dormant volcanoes are also there, making this place extremely dangerous. Scientists carefully study this region to find a way to predict when the next earthquake might strike. The Ring of Fire is not the only place at risk of earthquakes. In California, along the San Andreas fault line, 2 tectonic plates have been storing power for more than 200 years. The San Andreas Fault is 715 miles long and has the potential for a massive earthquake. This region has its fear of violent earthquakes like the one that happened in San Francisco in 1906. It had a magnitude of 7.8 on the Richter scale. Scientists' predictions are terrifying. They say that the chance of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake is very high in the area. If all hell starts to break loose, you should know how to survive. Avoid anything that might fall on you, like windows, closets, or unstable ceilings. The official phrase from emergency experts is drop, cover, and hold on. Stay low to the ground. Hide under something stable like a table, and remain there until the shaking stops. Make sure to stay in your shelter for another minute or two, just in case there are aftershocks or loose debris. Use your nose and smell for gas. If you do smell it, don't turn the lights on or do anything that might ignite it. Stay strong and be safe. The snowpack over your head splits in two right in front of your eyes and starts tumbling down in the frozen slope to its resting place far, far below.
Anything in its way is crushed under the immense mass of snow and debris. You're witnessing an avalanche, one of the most dangerous natural disasters. But what if I tell you about another kind of avalanche, no less blood-chilling than the mountain one? And the most bizarre thing about it is that it occurs underwater. Underwater avalanches are powerful and disastrous natural phenomena, often much more dangerous than land ones. They have the potential to wreak havoc on the entire planet, leading to catastrophic consequences. The most alarming thing? They occur all the time under the surface of the ocean, impossible to see, predict, and extremely difficult to measure. Such avalanches can get 100 times larger than land ones, and they pose a great risk to the world's communications, capable of leaving the entire planet without the internet. But we'll talk about it a bit later. First, let's go 60,000 years back into the past. We're near the northwest coast of Africa, ready to witness the colossal scale and devastating impact of a ginormous underwater avalanche. It started as a quite small underwater landslide in the Agadir Canyon. At first, it was just 0.35 cubic miles of material, but in no time, this mass increased more than 100 times in size while traveling across the Atlantic Ocean floor. As the avalanche sped up and grew, it picked up gravel, sand, rocks, and mud. It carved a devastating path through one of the world's largest submarine canyons, wiping out all forms of animal and plant life on its way. The disastrous flow was so powerful that it literally eroded a 250-mile stretch of the canyon, cutting hundreds of feet into its sides and damaging a total area of 1,740 square miles. That's the area of more than 3.5 New York cities. As for the force of the flow, it was so immense that it propelled massive boulders up the canyon walls to heights of up to 430 feet. Before scientists discovered the evidence of this catastrophic event, they had seriously underestimated the scale of destruction caused by submarine avalanches. By the way, these devastating catastrophes can start not only far away in the ocean, but also at estuaries. Let's go back to 14 January 2020 and see for ourselves. A turbidity current, a rapid, downhill flow of water containing a lot of sediment, rushed more than 680 miles from the Congo River estuary in the deep sea. This current appeared due to two factors: terrible flooding along the Congo River in late December 2019 and unusually large spring tides. This resulted in an avalanche of sand and mud. Its volume was equivalent to 1/3 of all the sediment produced annually by all the rivers in the world. This sediment avalanche accelerated, increasing in speed from 17 feet per second in the upper part of the Congo Canyon to 26 feet per second when it reached the end of the channel, almost 700 miles away from the coastline. This route made it the longest avalanche of sediment ever measured on our planet. 2 days later, the flow reached the deep ocean. The avalanche broke 2 seabed telecommunication cables, cutting internet data speeds all the way across West, Central, and South Africa. Now, before this disaster, scientists considered that measuring powerful deep-sea avalanches was impractical. But the sediment flow in the Congo Canyon could be monitored directly, finally allowing researchers to assess how major river floods connected to the deep sea. They also concluded that how often underwater avalanches occurred depended on where the observer was. Seafloor canyons that are close to river mouths can experience several tiny avalanches per year. Other systems, far from river discharges like the Agadir Canyon, can only have one monster of an avalanche every 10,000 years or so. You're likely wondering, what can trigger an avalanche under the surface of the ocean? Well, earthquakes, typhoons, high tides, river floods, and even volcanic eruptions. And due to our changing climate, such events become more and more frequent and intense. At the same time, these triggers don't mean that an avalanche is bound to happen, nor do they relate to the scale of the event. See for yourself. In 1755, a powerful earthquake hit the coast of Portugal, wiping out large parts of Lisbon. Tens of thousands of people lost their lives during that disaster, but it only triggered a tiny underwater avalanche. And in 1929, a large earthquake off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, triggered the largest underwater avalanche ever recorded. The flow traveled at a speed of 42 miles per hour, carrying boulders, sand, and mud. It snapped 11 seabed cables on its journey downhill. The avalanche was so powerful, it produced a tsunami that claimed the lives of 28 people along the coastline. Now, submarine avalanches are totally invisible because they happen deep under the ocean surface, which makes them extremely hard to study. But we must find a way because these flows are super important. They transport sediments, nutrients, and even pollutants across the ocean floor. So, a research team from Liverpool decided to unravel this mystery. Over the last 40 years, they've collected more than 300 samples from the ocean floor. Combined with seismic and bathymetric data, which is a fancy word for ocean mapping, they managed to reconstruct a massive submarine avalanche. It was the first time an underwater avalanche of this size was mapped out. An even cooler thing, the event itself started off pretty modestly, but it quickly evolved into a colossal avalanche that grew to more than 650 feet tall. To put that into perspective, imagine a skyscraper-sized avalanche zooming from Liverpool to London, cutting a trench 100 feet deep and 9 miles wide. Then it spread out over an area bigger than the UK, covering it with several feet of sand and mud. That's like burying a whole country. These findings are actually a big deal because they show that even a small underwater landslide can turn into something massive and super destructive. But that's not the worst. Think about undersea internet cables, which are essential for global communication. There are more than 550 active seafloor cables around the world. Their combined length is a whopping 870,000 miles. That's enough to wrap around our planet 35 times. When a submarine avalanche breaks seafloor cables, the effects are usually super expensive and devastating. For example, in 2006, an earthquake in Taiwan triggered underwater avalanches that cut loads of seafloor cables connecting Southeast Asia with the rest of the world. The largest internet operator in China had a 90% loss of traffic to the USA at the peak of the event. As for Taiwan itself, it experienced between 74 to 100% loss in traffic to neighboring islands. So now you probably get why we need to learn more about this natural phenomenon. Luckily, researchers at Tulane University have found a way to study it in 3D. Previous studies only looked at submarine avalanches in 2D, which didn't give the full picture of how they actually behaved. The new research focused on how underwater flows interacted with mini basins, natural features on the ocean floor that look like shallow bowls. Despite being called mini, these bowls can be huge, up to 4 square miles. When turbidity currents flow into these mini basins, they don't just stop. No, they hit the far side and curl back around like water eddies in a stream. These swirling flows move the sediment around before it settles on the ocean floor. The size of the mini basin and the speed of the flow can change how the current behaves. If the basin is big and the current is slow, it starts to fill up with sediment. But if you crank up the flow speed or shrink the basin, the current starts to overflow, spilling over the basin. To study all this, the researchers created a mini version of a mini basin in a pool and used different speeds of flow to simulate turbidity currents. They even made their own sediment mixtures to see how different sizes of particles would behave. In the end, they managed to mimic real-life ocean conditions, but on a smaller, manageable scale. Pretty cool, huh?
Get ready, because one of the Pacific Ocean's most active volcanoes might blow any minute now. Scientists monitoring axial seamelt, a gigantic underwater lava factory just off the coast of Oregon, say it could erupt literally any time between today and early 2026 at the latest. Yes, it's underwater, but don't get tricked by the ocean's cover. This beast is almost 3 times taller than the Empire State Building. This volcano is inflating like a souffle at a Michelin-starred restaurant, and scientists are so excited they will live stream it. Seriously! So here's the thing. This volcano will explode at any moment now because, well, it's inflating fast. Over the past few months, researchers have noticed that the seafloor is literally rising. It's like Axial is doing its best impression of a waterbed filled with molten rock. Scientists call this inflation, which sounds like something you'd complain about after Thanksgiving dinner. But in volcano terms, it means magma is piling up underground, causing the seafloor to bulge like a souffle that's this close to collapsing. Now, an underwater volcanic eruption might not sound so exotic. After all, most volcanic activity on Earth happens under the sea. Believe it or not, there are more than 1 million submarine volcanoes quietly churning lava beneath the waves as you watch this. The ocean floor is Earth's biggest volcanic hotspot. What makes axial seamount so thrilling is that it's under intense scientific surveillance, unlike any other underwater volcano. It's like the star player in a volcanic reality show, with a network of ocean-bottom instruments giving researchers real-time updates on magma movements, seismic tremors, and crust deformation. In fact, Axial Seamount hosts the world's first-ever underwater volcanic laboratory. Scientists have been keeping a constant eye on it since the 1990s, when they installed sensors that now relay live data straight from the seafloor. This kind of monitoring is unheard of elsewhere and has turned Axial into a geological celebrity, one whose behavior we can track with remarkable precision. Besides, Axial is hilariously predictable. It erupts roughly every decade, and right on cue, it's gearing up for another performance. By mid-2024, it had inflated to nearly the same level as before its last eruption, which means the countdown is on. Scientists are so confident in its schedule that they've set up a volcanic advent calendar, waiting for the day when Axial decides to pop. But hold on, Axial Seamount isn't just your average underwater volcano. It's got style, personality, and a geological identity of its own. Now, most underwater volcanoes, called seamounts, tend to look like cones or flattened domes. Axial laughs in the face of tradition with its unfashionably rectangular caldera, a 2-by-5-mile crater that looks like it was designed by a geologist with a ruler and a grudge against curves. Most volcanoes opt for the classic circular look, but Axial, it went full avant-garde. This caldera is punctuated by fissures, vents, lava channels, and mysterious dome-like structures that rise hundreds of feet high. It's like the volcano's wearing a funky geometrical crown instead of the usual rounded hat. What's more, Axial's location is like prime real estate for geological fireworks. It sits right where two major forces collide, literally. First, it's on the Juan de Fuca Ridge, an underwater mountain range formed where two tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, like a zipper being undone. Second, it's perched atop the Cobb Hotspot, a deep mantle plume that acts like Earth's sneaky magma espresso machine, pumping molten rock from deep inside the planet and fueling a whole chain of seamounts. To put it plainly, it's like the tectonic plates are reluctant dance partners, sliding away from each other, while the Cobb Hotspot acts as the DJ, turning up the heat and keeping the magma party going. This dual influence creates a complex plumbing system inside the volcano, with magma chambers filling, draining, and shifting in ways scientists are still trying to decode. The competition between the spreading plates and upwelling magma is what gives Axial its unique geological fingerprint, and it's also why this volcano keeps surprising us. Now, we said that Axial Summit isn't just a crater. The truth is that inside, the action gets even weirder and cooler, well, hotter, but you get it. Axial hosts black smoker hydrothermal vents, which blast superheated water at temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit. This is no ordinary underwater hot tub. These vents create one of Earth's most extreme environments, where bizarre creatures thrive in total darkness and scalding heat. Giant tube worms, crabs, colonies of bacteria, and even octopuses live off the mineral-rich plumes that gush from these vents, forming ecosystems completely independent from sunlight and photosynthesis. It's like an alien world beneath the waves, thriving off the volcano's fiery breath. These vent communities are crucial to science, not just because they're strange, but because they may resemble the earliest ecosystems on Earth. Some researchers believe life on our planet may have originated in similar deep-sea hydrothermal environments billions of years ago. Studying them could also help us search for life on icy moons, like Europa and Enceladus, where similar vents might exist beneath their frozen surfaces. When axial erupts, it's like a natural reset button for these communities. The lava wipes everything out, but within months, life comes roaring back. Proof that even in the most hostile environments, real estate is always in demand. For those worrying about tsunamis or coastal disasters, relax. Axial eruptions are the underwater equivalent of a slow cooker. The immense water pressure keeps things chill, well, scalding, but not explosive. So the worst thing that happens is some lava decorates the seafloor, and a few crabs have to find new vents to squat in. This means no massive ash clouds or explosive blasts that could reach the surface. Instead, lava oozes out and spreads across the seafloor, sometimes traveling for miles. But for scientists, this eruption is the golden ticket. Understanding axial patterns could help predict eruptions elsewhere, even on land. Plus, its bizarre ecosystems offer clues about how life might survive on other planets. Not bad for a volcano that mostly just sits around looking rectangular. Still, the volcano's activity can be heard in the form of thousands of small earthquakes every day. Thousands! As if the volcano itself was groaning and creaking, preparing to burst open. Again, we won't feel a thing, but at least they'll help scientists track the magma's movements and the volcano's eruptive cycle. Now, one of the coolest parts of this story is that scientists are preparing to live-stream Axial's next eruption for the first time ever. Imagine watching an undersea volcano in action, live, as it's painting the ocean floor with fresh lava. It's like a front-row seat to a natural fireworks display, thousands of feet beneath the waves. The livestream will come courtesy of the Ocean Observatory's initiative, which maintains a series of fiber optic cables linking Axial's instruments directly to shore. It's the Wi-Fi of the deep sea, and it's about to broadcast molten rock in HD. And there's another twist. Scientists have noticed a curious pattern in Axial's eruptions. All three of its most recent eruptions, in 1998, 2011, and 2015, happened between January and April, the months when Earth starts moving away from the Sun. So why? Well, it might have something to do with the Moon's gravitational pull. The Moon's orbit causes ocean tides to rise and fall, which changes the pressure on the seafloor and could help nudge the magma chamber to its breaking point. I guess the Moon isn't just a romantic light in the night sky. It might be the ultimate volcanic whisperer. So, one thing's for sure, when Axial goes, it'll be the best documented underwater eruption in history. So, keep your eyes peeled. This is one natural spectacle you won't want to miss. And who knows, if we're lucky, we might even get deep-sea eruption ASMR out of the deal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be refreshing the live feed like it's a Taylor Swift ticket sale.
It's the 15th of January, 2022, 4:47 p.m. local time. It will start any moment. Here, do you feel these jolts? The South Pacific is about to experience one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions ever recorded by modern instruments. The eruption begins at Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'api, an underwater volcano in the Tongan archipelago. The eruption itself is enormous. Its volcanic explosivity index is at least VEI 5, with the maximum being 8. It's as powerful as such historic catastrophes as Mount St. Helens in 1980 and Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. The eruption releases a staggering 2.4 cubic miles of volcanic material and sends over 150 million tons of water vapor into the stratosphere. This amount of water vapor would have been enough to fill 58,000 Olympic swimming pools. Additionally, the eruption generates the fastest underwater currents ever recorded and triggers large tsunamis that struck areas as far as Peru, more than 6,200 miles away from the volcano. and it takes at least 4 lives, with even more missing. But the craziest thing is that just before the eruption, 15 minutes ahead of time, there was a kind of warning. But as it often happens, people simply missed them. 2 seismic stations, about 466 miles away from the volcano, which is pretty far for this kind of thing, picked it up. They figured out it was a Rayleigh wave, which is a type of seismic wave that moves along Earth's surface. This wave was caused by a fracture in the ocean floor, where magma and seawater started to interact under a lot of pressure. That's likely what triggered the eruption. The crazy thing is that normally, volcanic seismic signals are pretty small and can only be detected close to the volcano. But this Rayleigh wave traveled way farther than usual and was much stronger. It means there had to be a massive amount of movement going on beneath the surface before the eruption. While people on the ground didn't feel it, those distant sensors picked it up. And this discovery is great for identifying volcanic threats earlier in the future and for improving early warning systems. If scientists can detect these seismic precursors, they could give a heads up before an eruption happens. That would give people time to evacuate and reduce the chances of injuries or property damage, especially for underwater volcanoes like this one, which can also trigger fatal tsunamis. Now, the eruption was big, but its impact was mostly contained. However, this discovery underlines how important seismic data is for predicting and preparing for these disasters. Even though this precursor wasn't used to issue a warning during this eruption, the idea that we could use this kind of information in real time during future eruptions is really promising, especially for underwater eruptions, which apparently might give us more warning time than we thought. Even though we wouldn't have been able to hear that precursor warning signal, there is a sound so loud it could actually finish you. And while such sounds are incredibly rare, the loudest noise ever recorded was indeed fatal to those who were close enough. On 27 August 1883, the eruption of the Krakatoa volcano in Indonesia created the loudest noise ever measured. It's thought to have been an astonishing 310 decibels at the source. To put this in perspective, a hand drill produces the sound of 98 decibels. The noise produced by a jet engine measures 140 decibels. And the sound of 180 decibels is capable of destroying your hearing tissue. So, the sound Krakatoa produced reached more than 170 decibels at a distance of 100 miles. And sailors aboard a ship just 40 miles from the eruption had their eardrums burst from the sound. The explosion's reverberation was so powerful that it was heard 3,000 miles away. In fact, at a farm in Alice Springs, Australia, over 2,200 miles away, sheep farmers reported hearing what they thought were gunshots. The sound from Krakatoa traveled around the world multiple times. Although no one heard the explosion beyond 3,000 miles, spikes of atmospheric pressure were recorded in places as far away as Canada and England. Those must have been the sound waves produced by the eruption traveling around the globe. Sound above 150 decibels can potentially cause life-threatening harm. In particular, sounds between 170 and 200 decibels can result in lethal conditions, including burst lungs. Anything over 240 decibels could cause fatal injuries, and you don't even want to know what those are. I'll just say that those sometimes happen to cartoon characters, but rarely to people. The scientific explanation behind this is that sound is essentially a wave of pressure, which can travel through both solids and liquids. And, in the case of an incredibly loud sound, pass right through the human body. If the pressure from such a sound is high enough, it can rupture eardrums and internal organs, causing significant and often fatal damage. Now, you probably know how volcanoes sometimes have small earthquakes before they erupt. Well, they often produce this weird sound called a harmonic tremor. The sound kind of hums, and the frequency of the hum gets higher and higher until it suddenly stops just before the volcano erupts. The sound has been recorded at a bunch of volcanoes around the world. But the thing about Redoubt Volcano in Alaska is that its tremor is so intense, people can actually hear it. It's like the volcano is letting out this crazy scream right before the eruption. According to a geophysicist at the University of Washington, the frequency of Redoubt's harmonic tremor is so high that it is barely perceptible as a low bass hum, and that's at its highest pitch. All because the pitch of Redoubt's tremor exceeds that of any other recorded volcano. It questions the limits of the existing models used to explain these phenomena. That's why researchers had to propose a new model to account for these unusually high-pitched tremors. Most volcanoes produce sound when magma bubbles vibrate as they rise through cracks in Earth's crust. But in the case of Redoubt, scientists believe that the harmonic tremor and associated earthquakes occur when magma is forced through a narrow opening under immense pressure. The thick magma sticks to the rock surface inside the conduit, a channel or a pipe that carries magma from a reservoir or chamber to the vent. As the pressure builds, the magma moves upward. This makes it stick again until the pressure forces it to move once more. These sudden movements cause small earthquakes, which, as the pressure increases, occur more rapidly and blend into a continuous rising noise. So it's actually the rocks making the sounds. This new model is important because it could help scientists better understand the eruptive cycles of volcanoes like Redoubt. It could also serve as a limited early warning system. By the time Redoubt began to scream like this, the volcano had already been erupting for a few days. So the tremor might only provide a few minutes or hours of warning before the next explosion. The harmonic tremor at Redoubt reaches an extremely high frequency, then falls eerily silent before the volcano erupts again. This pause occurs when the earthquake activity slows down and the two sides of the fault slip smoothly against one another. Maybe that's when even earthquakes can't keep up anymore. The new model may also apply to other volcanoes, such as the Soufriere Hills volcano on the Caribbean island of Montserrat. The research team is now planning to investigate why the pressure at Redoubt is concentrated in one specific spot. To move ahead in their research, the scientists have created 2 recordings of Redoubt's seismic activity. The first, a 10-second recording, compresses about 10 minutes of seismic sounds and harmonic tremors, sped up 60 times. The second, a 1-minute recording, condenses roughly an hour of activity, including more than 1,600 small earthquakes that had occurred before Redoubt's first explosion with harmonic tremor. These recordings could provide crucial insight into the dynamics of volcanic eruptions and the signals that precede them. On January 26, 1700, one of the biggest earthquakes in history hit off the coast of the United States. It had a magnitude of 9, which puts it in the top 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. This earthquake triggered a huge tsunami and changed the coastline all the way from southern British Columbia down to northern California forever. Back then, the area wasn't very populated, but thanks to some clever research, scientists figured out exactly what happened that day by looking at old geological records, tree rings, and even some history from Japan. On the same day as the earthquake, a massive tsunami also hit Japan's eastern coast. For a long time, no one connected the two, but in the 1980s and 90s, researchers realized the tsunami in Japan had been caused by the earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. They were also able to pinpoint the exact day, January 26, 1700. They even found old trees in coastal Washington that had all perished around the winter of 1700, which matched up perfectly with the timing of the earthquake. The earthquake came from the Cascadia subduction zone, a fault where the Juan de Fuca plate slides under the North American plate. This fault stretches about 700 miles, from northern Vancouver Island in British Columbia to Cape Mendocino in California. The pressure from the moving plates builds up over time, and eventually, another big, devastating earthquake will hit the same region. It's just a matter of time. By looking at the geological records, past tsunami deposits, and signs of land level changes, scientists can figure out how often these huge earthquakes happen.
Emergency planners have been preparing for the next big quake, often calling it the big one. Scientists believe earthquakes in the Cascadia subduction zone happen every 200 to 1,000 years. And since the last major one was over 300 years ago, the Pacific Northwest is definitely due for another. When it happens, the earthquake is expected to be as big as the one from 1700. But this time, it'll affect around 15 million people. The devastation will be severe. Buildings will collapse, roads and runways will crack, and bridges will fall. Communication in and out of the area will be cut off. But the worst part? The earthquake will trigger a massive tsunami that might hit parts of the Washington coast in as little as 10 minutes. It's not a matter of if, but when the Cascadia subduction zone will break. When it happens, it will be the worst disaster the US has ever faced. Worse than the Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy. It'll impact an enormous area stretching from southern British Columbia all the way down through Oregon to northern California. That means millions and millions of people will be affected. Fairchild is considered a backup staging area for handling the aftermath of the earthquake, with Grant County International Airport in Moses Lake being the main one. For those who will survive the initial quake and tsunami, the aftermath could be just as disastrous. Aftershocks will follow, and transportation will be a mess. Roads will be damaged or completely blocked, airports will shut down, and most of the main routes, like Interstate 5, will have bridges destroyed. This means food and water supplies will be cut off, and it will be incredibly difficult for help to get in or for people to escape. Gas pipelines will most likely be damaged too, and restoring them could take anywhere from a few days inland to weeks or even months along the coast. Power outages will be widespread within 100 miles of the coast throughout the entire Pacific Northwest. And water could be out for 3 to 7 months. Even telecommunications will be down for 2 to 3 months across the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, and even parts of East Asia. The good news for eastern Washington is that it will mostly avoid the worst of it, thanks to natural barriers between the west and east sides of the state. The tsunami may hit the Columbia River Gorge, but it will lose energy quickly because of a sandbar under the river. The Cascade Mountains will absorb much of the earthquake's impact, so the east side won't feel it as strongly. And since eastern Washington won't get hit as hard, it'll be up to them to handle the aftermath of the quake. That means helping western Washington, taking in refugees from the areas that got destroyed, and delivering supplies to where they're needed. Scientists have looked at other major 8.0 to 9.0 magnitude earthquakes like the ones in Chile in 1960, Alaska in 1964, and Sumatra in 2004, and Japan in 2011. These kinds of quakes can shake the ground for anywhere between 6 to 10 minutes, and that's a long time for the ground to be shaking. Such quakes are super intense because they happen close to Earth's surface, so it's not just a quick shake. It's a long, strong one that can cause a lot of damage. If the Cascadia earthquake and tsunami were to hit tomorrow, over 13,800 people could lose their lives, and about 107,000 people could be injured. The economic toll in Washington, Oregon, and California could top $70 billion. To put that into perspective, we can compare these numbers with some other major earthquakes. In Chile's 1960 earthquake, about 1,650 people lost their lives. The 1964 Alaska quake resulted in around 140 lives lost. The 2004 Sumatra earthquake and tsunami took the lives of an estimated 280,000 people. And the 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami caused over 20,000 casualties. Authorities know about the dangers of the Cascadia fault, but even with all the planning, no one can say for sure what will be needed when the big quake hits. Right after the earthquake and tsunami, the areas outside the immediate disaster zone won't be able to help much because roads and airports will be destroyed, and resources will be limited. How can we deal with this kind of disaster and its effects? We don't have all the answers yet. Right now, let's focus on the Cascadia subduction zone. It's a huge fault line that stretches about 620 miles from Vancouver Island to Cape Mendocino in California, sitting about 93 miles off the coast. It's like one tectonic plate is slowly sliding under another. When the plates are close to the surface, about 18 miles deep or less, they get stuck because of friction, kind of like pushing two rocks together. Over time, this creates a lot of pressure. When the pressure finally becomes too much, the plates slip, causing a massive earthquake. This is called a megathrust earthquake, and it can be huge. Below the area where the plates are stuck, there's a zone where the plates move really slowly. We're talking about just a few inches every few months. This slow movement helps to release some of the pressure, but it also builds up more pressure on the parts of the fault that are still stuck. This means that over time, it increases the chances of a huge earthquake happening. These massive quakes, called Great Subduction Zone earthquakes, can be stronger than magnitude 8.5. Megathrust earthquakes are the biggest earthquakes that happen. They can go over a magnitude of 9.0, which is insanely powerful. Just to put it in perspective, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake releases 1,000 times more energy than a 7.0 and 1,000,000 times more energy than a 5.0. These earthquakes happen when a lot of pressure builds up in a part of the fault that's locked, which means the plate can't move past each other. When that pressure gets too high, the fault finally ruptures, releasing all that built-up energy in one massive shake. The Cascadia subduction zone is super long. That's why if it were to rupture all at once, it could produce a large earthquake. Scientists have studied this region and found that about 18 miles below the surface, the fault is completely locked. The plates there aren't sliding past each other. But deeper down, the plates start to slide more smoothly, causing less friction. This is important because it tells us how much stress is building up in that locked zone, and how it could eventually lead to a major earthquake.
It was April 2025 when geologists went back to Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin for the first time this year. And while doing their usual check, they realized that something was different this time. Where there used to be just a boring patch of ground, now there was a giant hole, about 13 feet wide, filled with weird, milky, light blue water. Everyone was terrified. Was it the sign that the Yellowstone supervolcano was ready to erupt? If so, it would be a worldwide disaster, the kind that destroys cities. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, if such an eruption occurred, the after effects would be felt all over the world. To start, the areas immediately surrounding Yellowstone would experience pyroclastic flows. That's the lava that erupts out of a volcano, including a high-density mix of volcanic gas, ash, pumice, and hot lava blocks. Those flows would destroy everything they touch, and an eruption of Yellowstone would send them into Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Areas further away from Yellowstone would escape the flows, but they would experience falling ash. It would come down heavily in the states closest to the epicenter. The ash would be especially dangerous for anyone breathing it in. The weight of the ash would also pose a serious threat. It would smother crops and collapse buildings as it piles up. Tragic consequences would be countless, but we'll talk about them later, because soon after the discovery, the weird pit surprised even experts. Geologists found rocks scattered everywhere. Some were about a foot across, and all of them were dusted with gray mud. This mud matched the walls of the new spring. It was like the place had simply exploded, but nobody had actually seen it happen. The team checked old satellite images to figure out when it appeared. In December 2024, the ground was totally normal. By January 6, 2025, a little dip had formed. And by February 13th, that water-filled hole was finally there. But the weird thing was that the sensors that usually pick up major hydrothermal explosions didn't detect anything. There was no giant blast or warning signs. Later, it turned out that this puzzling opening in the ground hadn't just popped up in one huge explosion. Instead, It formed from a bunch of smaller bursts over time. Little explosions first threw out rocks, then mud, and eventually created the pit. With time, it filled with silica-rich water. That was a huge relief for everyone. Yellowstone sits on a supervolcano, and its big explosions are a nightmare scenario. Luckily, this time, it was just a slow-building, small-scale explosion. It was dramatic, sure, but totally manageable. You see, Yellowstone National Park is full of geysers, hot springs, and all kinds of natural landscapes. But under the surface, things get incredibly intense, all because of the supervolcano. Now, supervolcanoes are often extremely large. They often have no cone at all, since they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers. Once, those chambers flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hot spots. It's no surprise that supervolcanoes can produce super eruptions, and when they do it, they blow more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. In other words, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. Supervolcanoes form when huge volumes of scorching hot magma escape from deep underground. This magma rises close to the surface but can't break through Earth's crust. So, a pressurized pool of bubbling magma gathers at a depth of only several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. And then, bang, a super eruption occurs. Now, back in 2015, researchers at the University of Utah mapped out the main magma chamber of the Yellowstone supervolcano and were shocked by its size. And then, they found another one below it. Together, these underground magma pools could hold enough molten rock to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times. All that magma pushes up on the ground above, which is why Yellowstone rises about an inch or two every year. That slow lift might not sound like much, but combine it with the fact that Yellowstone is still an active volcano and has a volcanic explosivity index of 8, and it's enough to make you wonder what could happen if things went south. And yes, Yellowstone has indeed been a bit jumpy in recent years. In March 2023, there were 354 earthquakes in the area. Most were tiny, but the biggest hit a magnitude 3.7, part of a swarm of 106 quakes. Now, before you freak out, experts from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory say there's no need to panic. No eruption is coming anytime soon. Volcanoes don't stick to a schedule. Just because Yellowstone hasn't erupted in a long time doesn't mean it's about to blow. The park is stable for now, but scientists are keeping a close eye on everything underground, the quakes, the rising ground, and even temperature changes, just to be safe. The superhot plume of magma, a hotspot under Yellowstone, has been churning for 17 million years. The Earth's crust slowly moved over it, making the hotspot leave a trail of volcanoes stretching more than 450 miles along the Snake River Plain. Most of those ancient ones are now buried under layers of lava and sediment. In just the past 2.1 million years, Yellowstone has unleashed 3 cataclysmic eruptions, so massive they managed to reshape the land. Each explosion sent pyroclastic flows, rivers of searing hot rock, ash, and pumice racing outward for miles. The debris piled up in layers hundreds of feet thick, some forming solid lava-like rock. When those eruptions emptied the underground magma chambers, the roof collapsed, forming the massive calderas we see today. Even after those mega eruptions, Yellowstone didn't stop. Between 180,000 and 70,000 years ago, enormous rhyolite lava flows, sometimes over 144 cubic miles, poured out. Some flows followed north-south vent lines. The West Yellowstone flow erupted around 110,000 years ago. The Nez Perez Creek flow followed 160,000 years ago. If you stand at Madison Junction on the caldera's northwest rim, you can see it. a cliff that formed when the Lava Creek Tuff eruption collapsed the land 640,000 years ago. And inside the caldera, you'll see the hardened lava flows snaking across the floor. Figuring out when a supervolcano might blow is like being able to read nature's warning signals. Thousands of years before a massive eruption, the heat underground starts building, and the magma chambers become like ticking pressure cookers. Little signs start showing up. Gas bubbles escape as the pressure shifts, and earthquakes shake the ground. The land above slowly rises. Cracks appear. Hot springs and geysers start acting up, heating even more than usual. Now, what would happen if Yellowstone erupted? Remember those pyroclastic flows we talked about before? They can contain two parts: the lower flow of the hot lava that moves at ground level, and a cloud of ash that follows above the lava level. So the two of them would devastate huge areas. The ash would even reach Europe within 3 to 4 days of the eruption, but it wouldn't be so bad there. After that, it would only take around 2 to 3 weeks before cooler temperatures set in around the globe, all thanks to the sulfur gas that would get to the upper atmosphere after the eruption. Scientists predict that global temperatures would drop by up to 10 to 12 degrees. These consequences could last for 6 to 10 years, putting an end to monsoons, which could cause widespread famine in Asia. Scared? Well, don't be. The good news is that scientists don't believe that the sleeping giant under Yellowstone National Park will wake up in our lifetime. Experts say the next Yellowstone eruption won't likely happen for hundreds of thousands of years. And even then, it may not be that bad, because scientists have discovered that the magma lurking within Yellowstone is actually split up amongst 4 different chambers. Not only that, but some of the reservoirs of magma are likely to cool down and solidify, lessening the chances of an eruption. So, while an eruption does sound like it would change the landscape of the world, it's very unlikely to happen anytime soon. The strongest earthquake ever to strike east of the Mississippi River that happened over 200 years ago was never over, according to some scientists. Most earthquakes last seconds to minutes, and the official record breaker so far is a silent one in Sumatra that was going on for 32 years. This slow slip event triggered a massive quake and a tsunami. So if it's true that the New Madrid earthquake is still sending aftershocks, we'll have a new top name for this sad list. The earthquake started in December of 1811 with a powerful quake in a sparsely populated part of northeast Arkansas. They felt the shaking almost 1,000 miles away in the White House, and the tower bells were ringing in Boston, even further away. It even made the mighty Mississippi flow backward for a few minutes over new waterfalls formed by shifted ground. The town of New Madrid, Missouri, completely disappeared in the disaster. The Earth wouldn't stay still until the end of January the following year, when things got serious again. A massive quake hit, this time near the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, right in the Missouri boot heel. Geologists believe it was a rupture on the New Madrid Fault, putting even more strain on the nearby Reelfoot Fault. Just when people thought it couldn't get worse, another 2 weeks of trembling passed, and the Reelfoot Fault snapped deep beneath New Madrid. Down in Tennessee, about 15 miles south of New Madrid, the ground uplift created Reelfoot Lake. Steamboats were chugging along the river, with thousands of trees floating and acres of woods torn apart by the quake. In St. Louis, Missouri, which is 160 miles away, buildings were badly damaged, and chimneys fell in Cincinnati, Ohio, 400 miles away. People all the way in Montreal, Canada, over 1,000 miles away, felt the earthshake. Seismologists have registered about 200 small earthquakes in the New Madrid seismic zone every year since 1974. Some researchers believe that up to 30% of those were aftershocks from those big quakes back in 1811 and 1812. In parts of the U.S. where there's not much tectonic action going on, these aftershocks could keep rumbling for years, maybe even centuries, after the big ones hit. Aftershocks are the Earth's way of releasing all that built-up stress from the main quake. When the ground shakes from the first earthquake, it puts a lot of pressure on the rocks nearby. And when those rocks can't take it anymore, they crack, causing even more shaking. That's the aftershock. And they can be pretty intense, especially right after the main quake, but weaken over time. Not all scientists agree that contemporary earthquakes have to do with those from 200 years ago. We mostly associate faults with those lines where Earth's plates meet. But there's a whole network of those right under the center of the North American plate. They're like relics from 750 million years ago, when North America was part of a supercontinent called Rodinia. When Rodinia started to break up, it left behind these rifts, weak spots in the Earth's crust that run deep beneath the modern Midwest. It could explain the earthquake action. An international team of geologists decided to take a fresh look at 3 major earthquakes that shook North America and end the debate. They used a new math method called the nearest neighbor. It says that if earthquakes are too close in space, time, and magnitude to be independent background events, then one is assumed to have triggered the other. Depending on how you look at the numbers, somewhere between 10 to 65% of the recent quakes in the region could be aftershocks of those historic earthquakes. And a huge quake that hit Charleston, South Carolina at the end of the 19th century might explain up to 72% of the earthquakes in the area since then. But not all places are the same, so the scientific debate continues. In 1774, British explorer James Cook noticed a glow in the distance. It was the volcano of Mount Yasur in Vanuatu. This bad boy had been spewing lava and ash ever since, and it's quite likely that it's been doing that for way longer. The volcano has been sitting at alert level since October 2016, which means things are really unsettled around there. They've even marked off a 2,000-foot radius around the crater to keep people safe. There have been low to moderate outbursts, shooting out ash, gas, and steam, and some bigger blasts throwing stuff outside the crater. Satellite images have picked up on some hotspots of sulfur dioxide plumes, showing that Yasur is still cooking up a big storm down there. Stromboli, one of the volcanic islands near Sicily, officially has the Guinness World Record as the longest continuously erupting volcano. It has been putting on a fiery show for over 2,400 years straight. Ancient sailors nicknamed it the Lighthouse of the Mediterranean. Most of the time, Stromboli's just spitting out spatter, but every now and then, it throws in some lava flows or shoots up some moderately high fountains. Sometimes, you might even catch a glimpse of steam-driven outbursts. Over 200 million years ago, the world went through a major makeover, with not 1, not 2, but 4 massive volcanic eruptions changing the game. It all happened in Rensselaer, a large chunk of island that used to be a supermassive volcano stretching across what's now British Columbia and Alaska. This volcanic activity might have helped dinosaurs grow from cat-sized critters into giants we saw in Jurassic Park. It kicked off a 2-million-year rainy season. It made the whole world hot and humid, and the dinos just loved it. Researchers dug deep into sediment layers beneath an ancient lake in China to uncover these secrets. They found traces of volcanic ash and mercury, clear signs of those epic eruptions. There were carbon signatures showing huge spikes in carbon dioxide levels, making the atmosphere toasty and the rain pouring down. It all happened in 4 separate pulses, each triggered by those monstrous volcanic blasts. There's a spot in a national park not too far away from Sydney, Australia, where a fire has been raging deep underground for at least 6,000 years. They call it Burning Mountain, and it's a coal seam fire, burning its way through a layer of coal beneath the Earth's surface. Once these underground fires start, they're pretty much impossible to put out. This ball of fire is up to 30 feet wide and extremely hot, but there's no flame, it's smoldering. The fire has been creeping along at a pace of about 3 feet per year. A local farmer first spotted it in the 19th century and thought it was a volcano. The people who have lived here for ages believe this place is sacred. They've used it for cooking and crafting tools, and tell that it started from a widow's tears or the torch of a hero. But experts think it could have been a lightning strike or coal heating up like a summer barbecue from the interaction with oxygen. Some say it might have been burning since before the dinosaurs roamed the Earth. No one knows exactly how long this mountain will burn or in what direction it'll move. Right now, the coal has enough oxygen to burn for centuries or even millennia without human intervention. The fire is heating up the mountain like a giant oven, making it crack and crumble, inviting in more oxygen to feed on. Even if humans decide to take action, these coal seam fires need truckloads of water and liquid nitrogen to tame them. Several years ago, explorers noticed that the smolder was creeping close to a cliff overlooking a little river, and depending on what the coal seam decides to do next, we could see some dramatic changes here in the coming decades. There could be flames with much more heat, or the coal seam could go deep, extinguish itself, and smolder out.
Scientists discovered the largest water reservoir in the Oregon Cascades. It's hiding underground, holding more than twice the water volume of Lake Mead. Let me specify. It contains at least 19.4 cubic miles of water, which is almost 162 trillion bottles of water. If you drank one bottle a day, it would take you around 444 billion years to finish your stock. No wonder this underground aquifer discovery is so awesome. The Cascade Mountain Range, which contains the largest aquifer on Earth, stretches about 700 miles from Northern California to British Columbia. The high Cascades in Oregon have younger volcanic rocks, around 8 million years old. The Western Cascades are much older, 45 million years. They boast deep canyons and valleys. Scientists study the transition zone between these two areas to understand how water moved through volcanic rock and how volcanic processes had evolved over time. In the process, researchers measured rock temperatures at different depths. That's when the underground aquifer discovery happened. Normally, deeper rocks should be hotter because it's closer to the Earth's interior. But to everyone's surprise, in several areas, the temperature stayed the same even at greater depths. Well, this was a strong clue that water was flowing through the rock and cooling it down. In other words, the Cascades function like a natural water tower, storing and slowly releasing water into rivers and streams. These geological water findings are important for two main reasons. First, it's our potential water source for the future. Such a massive amount of water stored underground could be an important resource. So far, we don't know how long it will remain in its current state and how resilient it's going to be to changes. So, we need more research to properly manage its use. Secondly, it affects volcanic activity. When water seeps deep underground and reaches magma, it instantly turns into steam, creating extreme pressure that can trigger explosive volcanic eruptions. Understanding how much water is stored in volcanic rock could help predict future eruptions and the risks they pose. Now, even though this discovery is exciting, there are still many unanswered questions. Like, how does this water move through the volcanic rock? Or how much of it is actually usable as a water resource? Since this underground reservoir depends on rain and snow, a series of dry years could cause big problems for both water supply and volcanic stability. Researchers are now working to understand the full impact of the Cascades volcanic water reservoir and how to manage it responsibly. But let's look closely at the geological wonder that is the Cascade Range. Picture this, a massive mountain range stretching all the way from Northern California up to British Columbia, cutting right through the middle of Oregon. That's the mountain range we're talking about. In Oregon alone, it's about 260 miles long and up to 90 miles wide, covering 17,000 square miles. Whoa, that's bigger than each of the 9 smallest US states. The coolest thing is that the Oregon part of this mountain range is basically built by volcanoes, and apparently contains at least one volcanic rock water storage. The range itself exists because of something called the Cascadia Subduction Zone, where the Juan de Fuca tectonic plate,
a chunk of Earth's crust under the Pacific Ocean, is slowly getting shoved beneath North America. As it sinks, the intense heat and pressure force water out of the oceanic rock. It lowers the melting point of the surrounding mantle and creates magma. That magma rises up and fuels the Cascade volcanoes. This is part of the Ring of Fire, the giant belt of volcanoes circling the Pacific. So, in a way, the Cascades are part of a much bigger volcanic system that's constantly shifting and changing. The Oregon Cascades are actually made up of two completely different zones, the Western Cascades and the High Cascades, and they look nothing alike. The Western Cascades are the older part. They formed around 45 million years ago. These mountains are rugged and deeply carved up by rivers. Some canyons are as deep as 3,700 feet. This part of the range used to be volcanically active, but over time, erosion has taken over, reshaping the land. The High Cascades, on the other hand, are much younger and way less eroded. Around 8 million years ago, the volcanic activity shifted, and new eruptions filled in old canyons, smoothing out the landscape. Eruptions kept piling up fresh lava, and rivers in this region didn't have as much time to create deep valleys like they did in the Western Cascades. That's why if you look at the two regions side by side, one looks jagged and carved up, while the other looks smoother and more built up. Some of Oregon's most famous volcanoes are located in the High Cascades. I'm talking about Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, the Three Sisters, and Crater Lake, which actually formed when Mount Mazama erupted and collapsed in on itself. Unlike smaller volcanoes that pop up, erupt for a bit, and disappear over a few months or years, these giant volcanic centers have been active for thousands of years. And because they've been around for so long, they have way more complex magma systems. They produce everything from basalt, which is a runny, fast-moving lava, to andesite, dacite, and rhyolite. And rhyolite is the type of magma that leads to huge explosive eruptions. So, while some of these volcanoes might just ooze lava, others have the potential for devastating blasts. Another amazing thing about these long-lived volcanoes is that their underground magma chambers stay hot for a really long time. That's why the Cascades are one of the best places to tap into geothermal energy. There's a ton of heat just sitting beneath the surface, waiting to be used. Oh, and don't forget about the Cascades volcanic water reservoir. Who knows how we will use it in the future? Now, we already know that the Cascades are part of the magnificent Ring of Fire, Earth's most explosive zone. Imagine a massive horseshoe-shaped belt wrapping around the Pacific Ocean, stretching for about 25,000 miles. It's one of the most geologically active areas on the planet. This is where Earth's tectonic plates are constantly shifting, colliding, and grinding against each other, creating some of the world's most powerful earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and deep ocean trenches. The Ring of Fire follows the meeting points of multiple tectonic plates, and they all surround the giant Pacific Plate. These plates aren't just sitting still, they're always on the move, pushing against or sliding beneath each other at their boundaries, known as fault lines. When this happens, you get everything from deep-sea trenches to towering volcanoes and violent earthquakes. One of the most extreme examples of this activity is the Mariana Trench, located east of Guam. At 7 miles deep, it's the deepest ocean trench on Earth. It was formed by a process called subduction, where one tectonic plate is forced beneath another, sinking deep into the Earth's mantle. The Mariana Trench is one of the most mysterious places on Earth. It's insanely deep, with crushing pressure and total darkness. So for a long time, people thought nothing could live down there. But it turned out that life existed even at the very bottom. In 2005, scientists found a tiny single-celled organism in the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. They also came across colorful rocky formations and weird sea cucumbers. The Mariana Trench also has hydrothermal vents, which are basically underwater hot springs. Even though the water there is super hot and acidic, strange creatures and microscopic life forms still manage to survive there. The Ring of Fire is also responsible for 90% of the world's earthquakes. Some of the most powerful quakes in history have happened here, including the 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile, the strongest ever recorded, which hit a mind-boggling 9.5 on the Richter scale. But it's not just about earthquakes. The Ring of Fire is also home to about 75% of the planet's volcanoes. Some of the most famous eruptions in history have come from this region, like the infamous Mount Tambora in Indonesia. In short, the Ring of Fire is one of the most dangerous places on Earth, but it's also incredibly fascinating. Who knows what else scientists might discover in that region, like they discovered the largest water reservoir in the Cascades.
You rub your eyes, trying to make sense of everything. Perfect circular holes in the bottom of the ocean floor off the coast of Big Sur in California. You have no idea how this happened, even though you're a marine biologist who's been practicing it for years. You go through some of the old records and find out that these holes have been around since the 90s. In 1999, a ship-mounted sonar conducted a survey and found 5,200 of these pockmarks, or large holes over 500 square miles, on the ocean floor. They look like moon craters underwater. You contact your team and get the robot ready to go down and explore the scene and bring back a few samples. You and the team drive to the coast and hop on the boat. You're sitting inside controlling the robot with a joystick. Your teammate sets the robot in the water and drives it down. Everything seems normal near the surface, but as the robot goes lower, the pockmarks start appearing. A bunch of boats swift past you, making you lose your balance and focus. The robot turns on the flashlight so you can see better. But as it goes lower, the resolution is less crisp. It almost reaches the bottom, and the holes are smooth and nearly perfect circular shapes. Some of these holes that were visible in the sonar reading measure more than 30 feet across and 15 feet deep. You show the rest of your teammates the images, and they're shocked. The robot continues swimming, but there appear to be more holes all around. Many of them are too small for the scanner to capture from above. These microdepressions are steep and have sort of tails going in a certain direction. It's possible that the currents underwater played a role in their shape. Everywhere the robot swims, there are new holes all around. After a couple of hours, the robot goes back to the boat with some samples. You take them back to the lab and study them. The robot clearly captures images of human trash, but the samples don't indicate anything alarming for now. Despite the fact that 1/3 of the pockets are filled with trash, there's still no explanation of how they were formed. It's late at night and the rest of your team heads back home. You're passing out in the lab, still trying to find some answers. You wake up the next day, and while cooking breakfast, you get this idea that maybe these holes are gases venting out, which could be harmful to marine life. You quickly get the robot and sail out to the ocean once more. This time, you didn't even think about calling your teammates. You place the robot in the water and get behind the screen to control it. The robot descends to the bottom of the ocean and does a survey. So far, the holes still seem to be covered with trash. But some of the holes have marine life dwelling inside, like fish and seaweed. After much scanning, it doesn't look like they're producing any bubbles, which means there aren't any gases venting out, but you're determined to find them. After a while, you reach one of those large pockmarks, and the robot starts scanning around. You find some bubbles coming from a source, but the robot can't reach it. It swims around trying to find a spot, but nothing. You bring the robot back to the lab and work on it. You attach some mechanical arms on it that can lift things and move them. You bring the robot back down to the same spot, but the bubbles aren't as frequent as before. You use the arms to move some of the trash and find out that the bubbles are being produced by a group of crabs chilling next to a pile of plastic. Bingo! The bad news is, you still don't have a clue why the microdepressions and pockmarks exist. As you try to control the robot to go back to the surface, An octopus wraps its tentacles around it, pulling the robot down. You struggle with the controls and push it to maximum power. But the suctions of the octopus are too strong to break off. It's a game of tug-of-war with the octopus and your robot. It takes the robot under a pile of trash, thinking it's lunch. But you use the arms to maneuver the robot out and swim back to the surface. You go back to the lab even more confused. The robot has collected more samples for you to study. Your eye is glued to your microscope, trying to figure out what's going on, but nothing. You decide to do a carbon dating test to determine how old these holes are. After a while, you check out the results and are even more stunned than before. They show that the holes are around 400,000 years old, so it's likely that human trash wasn't the cause for all this. You pull many all-nighters trying to figure out the truth. You gather your team once more and hold a small press conference about this. You claim that this may be something we should be extremely worried about, but you still can't tell them more than what you know. With all the brain work put together, you find out that the large pockmarks haven't changed or been active for more than 50,000 years. The newer holes were most likely created by human trash settling in the bottom of the ocean floor. The marine life gathered some of this trash like plastics and discarded fishing gear and created homes for themselves. This is why around 4,500 of the holes are newer and have trash in them. But it still doesn't answer why the holes appeared in the first place. You're back to square one. The only way to see what's really going on is to clear up the trash from underwater and study them. The story makes headlines in the local community and catches the attention of a cleanup crew. You organize a trip to the ocean and begin the extraction of all the trash. Many cleanup boats arrive and everyone drops down a net to collect the trash. You send down the robot once more to make sure the nets are hitting the right spot. As most of the trash is being collected, many marine life animals scramble and try to find a way to escape. Everyone makes sure not to hurt them. After a couple of weeks, all the holes are cleared up from the trash. You do another sonar scan from the surface and can see the holes clearer than before. But you still don't have an answer for this. You do some more research trying to see if any other holes appeared around the world. On the other side of the country is a mysterious blue hole off of Florida's Gulf Coast. You catch the nearest flight to Florida and make an appointment with the scientist in charge of the expedition. Blue holes are underwater sinkholes that open below the seabed. Just like on the surface, the underwater world also has sinkholes. This one is called the Green Banana and is 150 feet below. And the hole is 435 feet deep. You dive with some special gear with the rest of the team to a barren ocean floor, and the hole is right there in front of you, looking like an oasis in the desert. You and the rest of the scientists are surprised by the diverse marine life dwelling within. Some sea turtles swim past you, and even sharks. These ones don't harm humans. Halfway through, you reach a narrow path, which makes it difficult for humans to pass through. But everyone is careful. There are corals, sponges, mollusks around the corner. You collect some samples and go back to the lab. Blue holes in general are richer in nutrients than barren lands and host plenty of unique marine life. They're quite common and don't pose any sort of threat to anyone. After making the connections, you don't think the holes off the coast of California have anything to do with blue holes. The mystery goes on. It's official. We now know the exact location and timing of the Yellowstone supervolcano's next eruption, and it's called a supervolcano for a reason. It will be thousands of times more powerful than a typical volcanic eruption. When this happens, the planet will face massive disasters. Earthquakes, tons of magma flows, ashen clouds that will block out the sun. The sky will be gray for a long time. We will have a shortage of food because of the lack of sunlight. Planes won't be able to fly. Some species of animals and trees may disappear. One disaster will follow another, like falling dominoes, one by one. Terrible times await Earth, and... okay, stop. It's clear, we got it. But when will all this happen? Don't worry, you won't be left without an answer.
When ordinary volcanoes erupt, it's always a disaster, but only for those places that are located near the epicenter. Multiply the damage from an ordinary volcano by thousands and you'll get a supervolcano eruption. Yellowstone is one of the largest volcanic systems in the world. It's erupted 3 times in the last 2.1 million years. The last time was 640,000 years ago. The ash covered an area comparable to about half of the United States. Fortunately, there were no people there, but nature got hurt. A similar eruption of a similar supervolcano occurred about 74,000 years ago. It was the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia that caused an apocalypse the human race barely managed to survive. According to some theories, only a few thousand people stayed alive at the time during the volcanic winter, but it's not confirmed. Since Yellowstone is a volcanic system located in a vast national park, it was important for scientists to find out exactly where the first spark would come from. They found out that Yellowstone's magma doesn't accumulate in one place, but hides in several separate underground reservoirs. The reservoir in the northeast of Yellowstone, next to a beautiful place called Sour Creek Dome, is the riskiest. Here, the red-hot magma comes into contact with the hot rocks of the mantle, which are located deep in the ground. Their high temperature keeps the magma in a liquid state. Imagine that you put a pot of hot milk on the stove. Nothing cools down, but only gets hotter, so the milk may soon begin to rise and flow out of the pan. The same thing is happening with the magma under Sour Creek Dome. Magma doesn't cool down there, and at some point it may start to come out. It'll be like a broken pipe from which a fountain of boiling water gushes. But how did scientists find out? The magma reservoirs are located at a depth of about 6 miles, and this whole area is incredibly hot. They used a special method called magnetotellurics. So, Earth's rotating core creates a magnetic field that surrounds our planet. Magma flows around the core, and it contains many magnetic minerals that also create magnetic fields. Scientists use special instruments that sense those fields emanating from the magma, like a metal detector senses lost jewelry on the beach. Using magnetotellurics, they scanned Yellowstone and discovered 4 large magma reservoirs. 3 of them emitted powerful electromagnetic waves, and in the 4th, which is in the northeast, they recorded a much stronger signal from the magnetic field. This is where the eruption is supposed to occur. But fortunately, it won't happen soon. Perhaps in tens of thousands of years, perhaps in hundreds. Phew, you can relax. No volcanic apocalypse is coming soon. But how do scientists know when this magma will start to erupt? Magma doesn't have a timer, and the volcano doesn't wake up with an alarm clock. So, magma flows inside the pores of solid rock. It resembles a dishwashing sponge with lots of small holes through which water passes. Magma penetrates these pores and fills them. For magma to start erupting outward, it must fill at least 40% of these pores. About 20% of them are filled now. But these hot rocks continue to heat the magma and keep it liquid, so it can flow between the pores. At some point, it will connect with other pools of the liquid magma and become a large stream that will rise to the top. How can we prevent this from happening? It seems that the solution here is to cool the balsam rocks, but it's impossible to do so. They are several miles deep, they are incandescent, and there are too many of them. And in any case, trying to cool a part of the Earth's core sounds like a very bad idea. All we can do is accept that nature has its own plans. If the eruption occurs in tens or hundreds of thousands of years, then perhaps humanity will find a way to solve this problem. If not, then we should prepare for the consequences. A huge global catastrophe starts with a massive, large-scale explosion. The erupting magma produces a gigantic amount of ash. A powerful burst of energy collapses the Earth's crust over the magma reservoir. This leads to the formation of a giant caldera. You've probably seen a huge crater in a volcano. So, this is the caldera. The natural disaster is so loud it deafens everyone who's nearby. The blast wave rises ash and pumice stone at a speed exceeding the speed of sound.
Volcanic materials reach incredibly high altitudes in minutes. Then, this pillar of ash spreads and plunges a huge territory into darkness. The incandescent particles in the lower part fall under their own weight and heat the air around them. It's almost impossible to breathe. The red-hot pieces of pumice stone and ash set fire to the surroundings. All this hot mass turns into pyroclastic flows that destroy and burn everything in their path. Forests, houses, roads, everything turns into coal. No planes can fly there. Tiny particles can penetrate engines. Besides, it's impossible to see through such a dark gray, hot cloud. It's also dangerous to drive cars. Volcanic particles can burn tires. Luckily, thanks to seismic technologies, people have learned in advance about the eruption, so everybody has evacuated. The column of ash that has reached the edge of space continues to expand in different directions. The wind helps the volcanic dust expand. A giant umbrella-like cloud appears over the territory of Yellowstone. It's getting wider and wider and plunges a huge area into hot darkness. During the first 24 hours, ash falls on most of the United States and parts of Canada. It knocks out power lines, pollutes bodies of water, and destroys crops. Then, the rains begin. The water mixes with the ash and falls to the ground in the form of gray mud. And don't forget, it's also poisonous. The ash contains mercury, arsenic, and lead in large quantities. Such toxic masses poison rivers, lakes, land, and air. All this time, the volcano continues to erupt. The outbursts of magma, ash, and pumice can last for several weeks or even a month. And this is just the beginning. The ash soon begins to settle, but the sulfur dioxide released during the eruption spreads all over the atmosphere. This gas mixes with the atmospheric water vapor and forms an aerosol consisting of small particles. All this covers the planet like a veil. This cap makes it difficult for the sun's rays to pass through, which means it lowers the temperature of the Earth's surface. These events cause a sharp cooling of several degrees in the world. Farmers lose a huge amount of their crops. Food prices rise and economies collapse. There might be a famine all over the planet. Human civilization can plunge into chaos. In a few years, the temperature will start rising, but it will take at least a couple of decades to return to previous standards. What will become of humanity by that time? Of course, we will survive, but we'll have to rebuild our civilization. But don't be afraid. If nothing depends on us, let's just enjoy every day of life. Be grateful and help each other. Supporting and caring for each other even during the volcanic winter is a guarantee that humanity will survive.
Deep inside our planet, there are two massive blobs of rock that have puzzled scientists for years. They sit deep inside, opposite each other. One lurks under the Pacific Ocean, the other under Africa. And they're so weird, they even make seismic waves slow down. Their actual name is large low-velocity provinces, but they're just two enormous, mysterious blobs of rock, bigger than continents, stranger than anything else inside the Earth, and so dense they might be leftovers from another planet. Until recently, no one knew what they were, where they came from, or why they even exist. These mysterious blobs could hold the secret to Earth's deepest forces, powerful enough to shape earthquakes, drive volcanic eruptions, and even influence the evolution of life itself. And now, we might finally learn the truth about them. These geological monsters are hidden about 1,800 miles beneath the surface. Each one is 100 times taller than Mount Everest, so vast they defy explanation. Now, at first, scientists thought these were primordial remnants from Earth's early days. Maybe something giant smashed into Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, and this impact formed both the Moon and these blobs. Scientists believe it could have been a planet named Theia, a Mars-sized planet that existed somewhere around the asteroid belt and slammed into Earth back in the day. Others believe it could be something much more familiar, old chunks of Earth's crust. Perhaps they got pushed deep into the mantle by the movement of tectonic plates. And now, A new study shows that these blobs are massive piles of oceanic crust that have been sinking into the Earth for billions of years. They could have formed from the stuff that sinks into Earth when tectonic plates collide. Over 1 billion years, pieces of ocean crust could have been swallowed by the mantle. Eventually, they collected into 2 massive regions deep inside the planet. But even though both blobs form the same way, they aren't identical. There's this place called the Pacific Ring of Fire, a giant loop of volcanoes and earthquake zones around the Pacific Ocean. Well, the Pacific blob doesn't just stop growing and changing because it's constantly being fed fresh rock from that place. Tectonic plates crash into each other, and one plate sinks beneath another, pushing old ocean crust deep into the Earth. Since this keeps happening, the Pacific blob is heavier, denser, and more active than its twin under Africa. It's like a giant hot rock factory, constantly getting new material and reshaping itself over time. The African blob is much older and quieter than the one under the Pacific. It doesn't get fresh rock pushed into it as often. That's why, over time, it has blended more with the surrounding mantle. Since it's less dense, it behaves differently. It rises higher into the Earth's mantle, stretching 340 miles closer to the surface. And that might be why Africa has so many powerful volcanoes and rift valleys today. The biggest question is, how do they keep evolving? Scientists think that huge columns of hot rock, called mantle plumes, might be pushing up from deep inside the Earth, helping to drive the movement of tectonic plates in the Pacific. If they're right, then these giant underground blobs aren't just sitting there. They're almost alive in a way. They'd be constantly changing and shaping the surface of our planet. But why do they even matter? Because these weird underground structures may be shaping Earth's surface in ways we don't fully understand yet. You see, first, they might influence Earth's magnetic field. That's because they affect how heat moves through the mantle and core. They might also hold clues about the history of plate tectonics. Studying them could help us figure out when subduction began on Earth, whether it was over 4 billion years ago or much more recently. These guys might also be secret puppet masters behind volcanic activity. There's a theory that blazing hot rock from deep inside the Earth, the same kind that creates volcanic hotspots, might be rising straight from the giant blobs in the mantle. Some of the biggest volcanoes on Earth, including those in Hawaii, Iceland, and Yellowstone, sit directly above the suspected rising plumes from these blobs. If these blobs are fueling these volcanoes, then they could be responsible for shaping Earth's continents, climate, and even mass extinctions throughout history. And well, that's horrifying. That would mean that these giant structures might burst through Earth's crust one day, unleashing catastrophic supervolcanic eruptions, and these eruptions would last for millions of years. Beneath the Earth's surface also lies monsters unlike anything else on this planet – supervolcanoes. They're so massive, so destructive, and so rare that no human has ever witnessed one erupt. A regular volcanic eruption can be terrifying. Lava spewing into the sky, ash choking the air, entire cities buried under fire and stone. But a supervolcano? Well, that's something else entirely. A supervolcano isn't just big, it's a category of its own. Their eruptions rip apart the Earth itself, creating massive craters called calderas. Some of them are over 30 miles wide. A regular volcanic eruption might spew out a few cubic miles of lava and ash. A supervolcano unleashes more than 240 cubic miles of material. That's enough to bury an entire continent in ash. An eruption like this would be newsworthy, to say the least. First, a wall of fire would blow up into the sky. Ash would block out the sun for years, dropping global temperatures. Entire countries could be buried under meters of ash, making farming impossible. Famine, extreme cold, and toxic air could wipe out entire civilizations. It wouldn't just be a local disaster, it would be global. In fact, 2 of the worst mass extinctions in Earth's history, where almost all life was wiped out, might have been caused by supervolcanoes, not asteroids. The biggest and most horrifying one was at the end of the Permian period. Literally, about 90% of all marine species and 70% of land species went poof. Scientists have counted about 20 supervolcanoes on Earth today. The most famous ones are Yellowstone in the US, Toba in Indonesia, and Topau in New Zealand. Now, the last time Yellowstone erupted was roughly 2 million years ago. It released almost 590 cubic miles of material, enough to bury a city like New York. That was just one of 3 Yellowstone supereruptions. The most recent supervolcano to erupt was Topau in New Zealand. This happened about 26,500 years ago. But supervolcanoes don't just destroy, they reshape the entire planet. About 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano erupted in Indonesia. Some scientists believe it triggered a volcanic winter that lasted an entire decade. There are also theories that suggest that this eruption nearly wiped out early humans. It reduced their numbers to just a few thousand survivors, although that's just speculation. Either way, we know for sure that supervolcano eruptions have changed the course of history. So, how do we prepare for them if this could happen at any moment? Well, scientists monitor volcanoes constantly, looking for warning signs. It could be stuff like rising magma, ground swelling, earthquakes beneath a volcano, changes in gas emissions, and so on. The problem is that while we can predict short-term eruptions, the long-term ones are still a mystery. Yellowstone last erupted 630,000 years ago. It's literally overdue for another eruption already. But volcanoes don't work like clocks. Just because one erupted in the past doesn't mean it will definitely go wild again, and the time between eruptions could be random. Scientists think Yellowstone could erupt again, but it might be just a small lava flow instead of a super eruption. Are we ready for a super eruption if it happens? Probably not. Scientists say we're more prepared for an asteroid strike than a supervolcano eruption. When Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai erupted in 2022, it cut off communications, caused tsunamis, and filled the sky with ash. And that was only a magnitude 5 eruption. A supervolcano would be orders of magnitude worse. So, good luck sleeping at night knowing these guys will erupt again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in 100,000 years. Nah, don't lose sleep over it. Oh look, there's a giant blob heading straight for New York City. Oh wait, hold on. You'll actually have to look down, not up. Because this blob is a mass of hot rock moving beneath the Earth's surface. And when it finally reaches the Big Apple, some say it could tear the continent in two. But Yankees fans, and even you Mets fans, don't worry, this journey is going to take about 15 million years or so. You see, a long time ago, people noticed something curious. When they looked at world maps, they thought, don't the continents look like puzzle pieces that could fit together? That couldn't just be a coincidence, right? Then, in the year 1912, a German meteorologist named Alfred Wegener came up with a revolutionary idea, something we now know as the theory of continental drift. Wegener said the continents are always on the move, and those huge chunks of land we see today were all once connected, forming one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. That idea suddenly explained a lot of mysteries, like why fossils from the same species turn up in different corners of the world, even though entire oceans lie between them, or why coastlines of continents match up so neatly, just like South America and Africa. Wegener also explained that mountains form when a drifting continent runs into another one, crumpling the land and pushing it upward. That is exactly how the Himalayas came to be. The Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate, and the land rose into the massive mountain range we see today. Now these days, everybody learns about Wegener's idea in school and takes it as fact. But back then, many people thought he was completely out of his mind. I mean, whole continents moving around? What on earth could push them? That's why it took scientists more than 50 years to finally go, oh, I see, it's the Earth's mantle. Yep, slow-moving currents of hot rock deep in the Earth's mantle push the tectonic plates around, and that means the continents move too. Picture super tough puzzle pieces floating on top of boiling oatmeal. That's a picture. Yep, they drift, and sooner or later they crash into each other. This is what happens on Earth's surface. And that's how we finally agreed that Wegener was right. But what if I told you that might not always be the case? Some experts agree that the supercontinent Pangaea started breaking apart about 200 million years ago. And that's how we ended up with the world map we know today. But a recent study is challenging part of that idea. And it all comes down to a giant mass of hot rock, something scientists call the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, or just NAA. Yep, what we casually call a blob, the experts call an anomaly, and that is simply because it is hotter than the rock around it. So this anomaly sits about 124 miles beneath the mountains of New England and stretches up to 249 miles wide. It lies in the asthenosphere, the semi-molten layer of Earth's upper mantle. But here's the strange part. It should not even be there. I mean, rock formations like this normally don't exist in that part of Earth's interior. For years, scientists thought the anomaly was left over from when the North American continent broke apart from Northwest Africa about 180 million years ago. This new study says that might not be the case. It suggests the blob is actually linked to the process that split Greenland from North America only about 80 million years ago. The idea then is that this blob is a leftover from when the landmass broke apart, a piece that never quite settled down. This is one stubborn blob we're talking about because it is still on the move, super slowly. But still, it moves only about 12 miles in a million years. Over time, it's already traveled more than 1,100 miles from where it first appeared. And now, New Yorkers, watch out! This blob of scorching hot rock is heading your way. Okay, I know, I'm being a little dramatic. The truth is, we really don't have to worry. First, scientists say it won't even get near the city for at least 15 million years. And second, even though we call it a blob, it is not something gelatinous. It is not oozing. And it is definitely not going to push its way up through the Earth's crust and invade the New York subway, or anything like that. That is just not going to happen. What the anomaly will look like, or what it might do to the continent in the future, is still a mystery for geologists. But they are pretty confident it will not have any real impact on human infrastructure or on our daily lives. It is not like lava that's suddenly going to burst through the floor of your house. That's because, at the end of the day, the blob is just rock. Like any rock you see on the street, only super high, enormous, and buried deep inside the Earth. To explain why this rock is sitting in such a weird spot, scientists came up with what they call the mantle wave theory. So think of it kind of like a lava lamp. After continents break apart, hot, heavy rock can detach from the bottom of the tectonic plates in blobs. These blobs, or pieces of rock, move around under the crust and create waves. When that hot material slips under a continent, it works like the flame under a hot air balloon. It gives the land a little lift. Then, when continents stretch and split, space opens up underneath and semi-molten rock quickly fills in. Eventually, it cools down, gets heavier, and sinks. Meanwhile, hotter mantle material rises up and creates a warm patch called a thermal anomaly. This sudden motion shakes up the base of the continent. Imagine a row of dominoes. One piece falls and the rest follows. Blobs of rock start dripping downward one after another, and over time, they slowly move inland. Scientists think these rock currents keep flowing, rippling under the surface for millions of years. Now, knowing all this matters because the anomaly might have played a role in shaping the land above it. For example, it may have lifted up some ancient mountains over the past few million years. That helps to explain a big mystery of the region, why the Appalachians are still standing. I mean, why haven't they worn down as much as you would expect after all this time? Well, think about it. The Appalachians are ancient. This mountain range in North America started forming hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the dinosaurs. With all that time, rain, wind, and erosion should have worn them down to almost nothing by now. Honestly, some geologists expected them to be rolling hills at best. But nope, they're still mountains, pretty ones too, and much bigger than they should be. And here's where the blob comes in. See, when a giant pocket of superhot rock sits under a mountain range, it can actually give the crust a little lift. It's kind of like putting a balloon under a blanket. The blanket rises up. The heat makes the Earth's crust lighter. So even while wind and rain are wearing the mountains down from above, the Earth is gently pushing them back up from below. There is another positive takeaway from this study. These new insights can help scientists better understand other strange geological features around the world. In fact, the researchers believe they may have already found a twin to this blob, sitting under north-central Greenland and also tied to the Labrador Sea. So, what can we conclude from all this? Well, tectonic plate movement is still the reasons continents break apart. But the process goes much deeper than we thought. The effects of ancient rifting can still play out millions of years after the surface split, just like what happened in Greenland. Although it's still really hard to predict what this anomaly will look like in the future, we know one thing for sure right now: there is nothing